Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Excellent.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Let's see.
Good morning.
Morning, Commissioner. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. Thank you.
Fantastic. So we've got Commissioner Hill, Commissioner Allender. I know Commissioner Sadowski will be a little bit late today. Commissioner Beasley with us? No. There's Commissioner Beasley joining us. Morning, Commissioner Beasley.
I'm sorry, I'm just talking. I hadn't taken it off mute. Good morning. How is everyone?
Doing good.
Good.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Glad to see you today.
You see me?
No, not at all. I wish I could.
Commissioner Rojas isn't coming today.
Commissioner Rojas. There you go.
So this is the first time using this.
Okay.
I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. I
There
don't
you
think,
go.
hi, y'all.
Aye.
Good job. Good job.
Okay. Who else? Commissioner Baker, is he with us yet?
I don't see him. It looks like it's right now. It's just the three of you plus Commissioner Hill.
Okay.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so we do have a quorum, so at least we can get started with the meeting, I imagine. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
I think so.
Commissioner Baker. Okay, so we got 5 now. So let's go ahead and get started with our meeting today. So good morning and welcome to the November 16th City Planning Commission meeting. It's going to be a beautiful spring day today, so make sure you get out there and enjoy it. Should be nice. Again, we appreciate you being here today as we hold our meeting virtually. Unfortunately, we have some conflicts with some scheduling within the council chambers that's caused us to be here in this format. And it kind of looks like we'll likely be here through the end of the year. But please do check the agenda as you download it from the website to make sure that we're whether it's all virtual or hybrid in-person kind of meeting. So, but I would venture to say it's going to be this way through the end of the year. Just another reminder about the comprehensive plan that's being updated. It's the KC Spirit Playbook. Check out the website playbook.kcmo.gov for more information. Frankly, there's a lot of information, a lot of stuff that's going on with that thing, and I hope that we can get an update in this forum after the first of the year. So they're about halfway through with the thing, so it'll be probably towards the end of next year by the time they get it done. It's a big document, great document. It's going to be what's going to guide us for the next 20 years. So make sure your input is heard on that thing. The commissioners understand every project is important and unique. We also want to make sure we address all of them with the attention that they need to build consensus between the applicant, the public, and city staff. So the commissioners believe we can reach a consensus by being brief, yet heard. So therefore, we have time limits in place for the cases that we hear, which is 5 minutes for staff presentations, 20 minutes for applicant presentations, plus time needed when questions are asked by the commissioners. When we move to the public comment section, please limit comments to 2 minutes. And that's when speaking as an individual, or 5 minutes when speaking on behalf of a community association or a larger group. So with that, as we get started, I asked staff, because this meeting is all virtual, to just briefly provide some ground rules as we get started. That way we can ensure we have minimal disruption of our meetings, it runs smooth, and we have maximum clarity. So Joe, if you can do those rules for us, that'd be great.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Basically, for everyone attending via Zoom, especially if this is your first time, it's important to know that there are 2 types of attendees in this meeting on Zoom. There are panelists and panelists, and I believe the other term is just attendees. The panelists are at this point just the commissioners and staff. As a panelist, you have the ability to share your video and audio and control those yourself. However, as attendees, you don't have that ability. What you do have the ability to do is to use the raised hand feature. And that's what you should do if you're the applicant or a member of the applicant team. When your case is called, go ahead and raise your hand in Zoom, and we will promote you over to a panelist position. And at that time, you will be able to share your video and audio so that you can speak on your case. The same is also true if you're a citizen who wishes to testify on any case. Go ahead and raise your hand when the staff presentation on that case begins. Or in the case of a consent agenda item, just raise your hand when that case is called, and we will promote you over when the chair opens public testimony for that case, and you'll be able to share your video and audio at that time. We do ask that once you're promoted over to a panelist position that you remain muted until it is your turn to speak, so that we don't pick up background noise, because that can be pretty distracting and make it hard to hear for everyone else. We also ask that the chat feature that you are welcome to use that if you have questions regarding technology or the agenda itself, but please do refrain from providing any sort of testimony or commentary regarding the merits of projects. That is not the purpose of the chat feature. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just a note here, I will try to update in the chat feature so everybody knows what case we're hearing at that particular time. Sometimes I do forget because I get really tied up into the meeting, but I'll do my best to keep that updated. So with that, let's go ahead and start our meeting. Going with the consent agenda items. It looks like we've got several cases on the consent agenda, but a couple of them either need to be continued or dismissed. So continued to a different date. So let's start with those items first, please.
Okay, the continuance requests are docket items C2, C4, C9, C10, and C12. So I'll start with C2, which is case number final plat 2021-00031. This is a request to approve a final plat for the village at Viewcrest, located at the northeast corner of Highway 152 and 169. The applicant is requesting continuance of this item off docket, and staff recommends without fee. The next continuance is C4, case number final plat 2021-00040. This is a request to approve a final plat for Denver Avenue final plat located at 4937 North Denver Avenue. Staff is recommending continuance of this one to December 7th without fee. As we just learned this morning, the applicant has questions regarding several conditions. So in order for there to be time for us to work that out, we need a continuance. Next one is docket item C9, case number CPC 2021-00179. This is a request to approve a project plan for private open space within Staley Shire, located at the southeast corner of Northeast 113th Terrace and Northeast Ryan King Road. And its companion case is docket item C10, case number final plat 2021-00047. This is a request to approve a final plat for Staley Shire at the same location. And staff is recommending that these two cases be continued to December 7th without fee. And the final continuance is docket item C12, case number final plat 2021-00046. This is a request to approve a final plat for Bennett Packaging Corporate Campus located at the southwest corner of Nolan Road and East US 40 Highway. There are some additional plan revisions necessary for this one, so staff is recommending continuance to December 7th without fee. And that concludes the continuances on consent.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commissioners regarding continuance of docket items C2, C4, C9, C10, or C12? Okay, seeing none, let's go ahead and open it up for public testimony. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak about the continuance of those 5 docket items, please raise your hand and you'll be called upon.
Mr. Chairman, I don't see anyone raising their hand.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close public testimony then. And I'll take a motion from one of the commissioners on continuance of these docket items, please.
I move to continue docket item C2, C9, C10 as listed on the docket, and also to continue docket item C4 to December 7th without fee, and C12 to December 7th without fee.
Second.
Okay, so I've got a motion and a second for continuance of those docket items as stated. So Lisa, do you mind taking roll call on that motion, please?
Mhm. Commissioner Allender,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Beasley,
Commissioner Beasley? Just a
Oh,
thumbs up or
can't hear
down? Okay,
gotcha. Crowell,
aye.
Enders,
Aye.
and Hill.
Aye.
Gotcha.
Okay, so it looks like the motion passes then to continue docket items C2, C4, C9, C10, and C12 as stated in the motion. So let's go ahead with the other consent agenda items, please.
All right, the remainder are items C1, C3, C5, C6, C8, and C11. Starting with C1, case number CPC 2021-00167. This is a request to approve a project plan for Better Wash at Berry Point, located at 8720 North Crescent Avenue. Staff is recommending approval with conditions. Docket item C3, case number final plat 2021-00039. Request to approve a final plat for the Reserve at Riverstone 5th plat to create 47 residential lots and 1 tract on land located east of Amity between Old Tiffany Springs Road on the north and Highway 152 on the south. Staff is recommending approval with conditions. Docket item C5, case number final plat 2021-00043. A request to approve a final plat for Staley Corners West to create 3 commercial lots and 1 detention tract located at the northwest corner of Northeast Berry Road and North Indiana Avenue. Staff is recommending approval with conditions. Docket item C6, case number CPC 2021-00170. A request to approve a final plan in District MPD for Erica's Place at Twin Creeks Village, which is located south of Northwest 96th Street and approximately 1,800 feet west of Platte Purchase Drive. Staff is recommending approval with conditions. Docket item C8, which is case number CPC 2021-00178. Request to approve a project plan to allow construction of the Bristol South gasoline and fuel sales use located at the northwest corner of Northwest 108th Street or Shoal Creek Parkway and Highway 169. Staff is recommending approval with conditions. And docket item C11, which is case number CPC 2021-00185, which is a request to approve a project plan to allow for a residential development entrance sign generally located at the northeast corner of 104th Terrace and Warnell Road. And staff is recommending approval of that with conditions as well. And that concludes the consent docket.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions from the commission regarding these docket items? Okay, seeing none, then I'll go ahead and open it up for public testimony. So if there's anybody out there that would like to speak on these consent agenda items C1, C3, C5, C6, C7, C8, and or C11, please raise your hand and you'll be called upon. And I just ask that when you're called upon, you state your name and address for the record, as well as the case of which you're referring to. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Patricia Jensen with the Rouse Retz Law Firm with offices located at 4510 Bellevue, here today on behalf of the applicant with regards to case number C8. We have some issues with a couple of the conditions that are listed in your conditions reports attached to your staff report. And if you would, Joe, I would appreciate it if you would also promote Rochelle Biondo, because she's got my PowerPoint stuff that I need, and Brian Mertz and Brian Ruoff. The 2 conditions that we have issues with, I sent a email yesterday to the staff at about noon, and I haven't heard back. So if I can draw your attention to, this deals with the property located at the northwest corner of 169 and Northwest Shoal Creek Parkway. There is a previously approved plan that was approved back in 2001 for this site, and it's got a number of commercial uses. This project plan functions as the final plan for that site, and this project plan is for the very southeast corner of the site, which involves a convenience store with gas sales. It's a little bit bigger than your normal convenience store because it also functions as a small grocery store. And the conditions that we have an issue with, Mr. Chairman, that I can focus your attention on is condition number 7, which requires construction of sidewalks along the platted frontage I'm assuming since this is only along Shoal Creek Parkway, that that's what is meant by the staff in regards to that. There are already sidewalks existing along Shoal Creek Parkway that were built when Shoal Creek Parkway was built along that area. There's another condition in the staff report that talks about repairing sidewalks. And that's in number 10. So I believe condition number 7 should be deleted. And then finally, the other condition is condition number 21. It comes from the Parks Department. Condition, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a history on this condition. Condition number 21 requires compliance with Parkway and Boulevard standards unless determined not applicable. We've had this discussion with the staff in regards to our first pre-application meeting that was held back on July 15th. And staff agreed with us at this time that Parkway and Boulevard standards do not apply in this case because this plan was approved pre-Boulevard and Parkway standards. What the staff asked us to do back on July 15th was to come into compliance with the standards as much as possible. And it was just basically a voluntary request. We did that. Actually, I think we do a really good job of that because we really paid attention to the transparency on the south side of the store, which is the side that's visible to Shoal Creek Parkway. In my response letter to staff on November 1st, I explained that again and asked them to delete that requirement. And at that time, they just said we had to comply. It appears that what the staff responded to was to add in the phrase, unless determined not applicable. They aren't applicable. So I'm not sure why we're discussing it and having conditions that kind of tend to say they are, when all of our conversations with the staff since July have been that they are not applicable. This depends on this project plan depends upon our sale, and we can't have a sale of this property unless our conditions are clear and everybody understands it. So we would request that you delete condition number 21. Both condition 7 and condition 21. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else out there want to speak on regarding the consent agenda items?
We do have, I believe, someone else who wants to speak on a different item. Do you want him to, do you want to take up this issue first, or do you want to have him speak?
Let's go ahead and address the C8 first, and then go from there. So we're looking at conditions. The request is to delete 7, 10, and 21.
No, just 7 and 21.
Oh, okay.
10 says we have to repair any of the sidewalks that are adjacent to Shoal Creek Parkway if necessary.
Okay.
We don't have an issue with that.
Okay. So just 7 and 21 are really the ones that issue then?
Correct.
Okay. So with that, I guess I'm just curious, is Stacy, are you available to maybe comment on consent agenda, the item 7 and 21?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. This is Stacy Lowe with Land Development. I can help you with condition number 7. I do not have any knowledge of condition number 21.
Okay.
On number 7, the intent was that we would have sidewalk installed along the entire platted frontage to ensure pedestrian connectivity on this site. After doing some further work on the previous controlling ordinance, looking into that and looking into the site plan, it appears that that plan may have been approved without that requirement being put in place. So Genevieve can confirm this for me since she is the planner who's handling this. But yeah, at this point, I don't believe we can hold the applicant to condition 7 since it was not part of the controlling ordinance.
Okay. All right, so we can delete that one. And then for condition 21, do we have somebody from Parks available?
I don't think that Justin from Parks is on here, and I just know, because I know Justin pretty well, I think what his intent was is he was not aware for sure whether the Parkway and Boulevard standards would apply. And that's why he wrote it that way. But Patricia is correct that this controlling plan was approved prior to the adoption of the Boulevard and Parkway standards, so they don't apply. So in our opinion, that condition should be removed.
Okay. With that, any questions from the commissioners on removal of number 7 and 21 from docket item C8? Okay. I think we've got that one addressed. So let's go ahead with the next person that would like to speak from the public.
On this case, is there anyone else
for this
who wants
case, or I think we're ready to move on to the next one, it seems like.
Okay. I believe the next one that someone raised their hand for was C11,
Okay.
which is the proposed monument sign for the Edison at Bridal Spur. And that is Doug Stone, who's the applicant or represents the applicant.
Okay.
I didn't see anyone else raise their hand for that case.
Okay. Mr. Stone, are you available?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I just put something in the chat. I simply wanted to promote myself to be available if there were questions. We don't really have any issues with the single condition on this application, but since my case was up, I just asked to be promoted.
Okay. All right. Do any of the commissioners have any questions regarding docket item C11? Okay. Looks like you're off the hook this time.
Very good. Thank you.
Mr.
right.
Chairman, we just got a hand raise from someone that's
Okay.
probably here for that case. I'll go ahead and promote Kevin Barthol.
Okay. Kevin, as you take yourself off mute, please state your name and address for the record. Kevin, you available?
I'm sorry, the unmute just popped up. There was a delay. Sorry, Commissioner Chair.
Yes, mind stating your name and address for the record and which docket item you wish to speak about.
Kevin Barthol, 37 West 104th Terrace, Kansas City, Missouri. Item number 11.
I'm sorry, you're kind of breaking up on us.
Item number 11.
Okay. And what's your concern with that?
My concern with that is I submitted a presentation. I don't know if that's been received or not. If they can display that.
Seems like you keep breaking up on us. I'm not getting much of your testimony here, unfortunately.
Can you hear me now?
You're coming in and out. Give it a shot.
Okay. I have a presentation I submitted. If it could be pulled up, please.
Okay. Does somebody on the staff have the presentation?
Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Mr. Chairman, this is Doug Stone, if I could be heard. I mean, this is a consent agenda item. If the commission wants to pull it off the consent agenda, certainly there can be a presentation, but honestly, this is a project, never mind. I'm sorry, I apologize. Whatever the commission would like to do, but this is the consent agenda at the moment.
Yeah, that's correct. And I just have it open for public testimony regarding the docket item. So if there's something that someone from the public would like to speak about this item, then I got to hear them to see what they have to say. And then we can decide if we want to keep it as a consent agenda item or pull it and actually make it an actual docket that we hear.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, I just put it in a presentation format just because there are some issues here when reviewing what's available to the public regarding the proposed plan, and then also what the staff report contains. statements that this is considered in compliance. And a quick note, when you look at this plan, the city did not account for any setback. It is right on the property line, and within the sign code, it's required a 20-foot setback, and it was not considered or identified as a deviation or deficiency back to the developer when this was submitted. The second point that I'm bringing up is that the sign that they submitted, when they measure it, it's not measured consistently with the same sign that was presented during the BZA that got denied. On the larger version, the smaller version, they display it in there and they measure it, and it is not measured consistently across the standards with the same sign.
So you're
So
saying the sign is already installed? Is that what you're saying?
it's not installed. This is still just a plan.
Okay.
So I'm just pointing out that there's some discrepancies between city staff, allowing or viewing one sign, the same sign in the BZA arena and in this arena. It's just inconsistent. It may require a legal look at.
Okay.
And that's good enough summary from this side.
Okay, thank you. Joe, is there something more that we need to discuss on this actual case and look at it in more detail than a consent agenda item, or is this something we can work out here now?
Oh, I think you can work it out here now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm trying to understand what was submitted and what's going to be installed is different than what's on your staff report. I don't understand the comment.
Yeah, I think we need to let Andrew Clark, who's the planner on this, provide some clarity as to what has actually been proposed with this application, and maybe that will help.
Okay.
There was a variance application that was proposed for a different sign at a different location that was not approved. But this is a different sign at a different location that is allowed by ordinance if approved with a project plan, which is what's before you today.
Okay.
But there is a setback requirement.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and fellow commissioners. Would you like me to pull up some slides to help you out here?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, can you see okay?
Yes.
Okay. So the site, yep, is at 104th and Warnell. You can't see in this imagery, but the multifamily units have all been constructed. So this is a project plan.
Can you advance your slide?
Can you see? Oh, sorry, wrong
All
screen.
we can see is the first slide.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. So this project plan is for the proposed residential entrance sign located at the corner of 104th and Warnell. The residential entrance sign all signs in residential districts do have a setback requirement, and it is the intersection of the front and side property lines. It does not say that it has to be 20 feet. I'll pull back here, 20 feet back into the property, 20 feet from the intersection of the front yard and side yard property line. So I do have a condition on this that when the applicant does apply for a sign permit, that they will, this will have to be reviewed again so that we can confirm that they are meeting the 20-foot setback from the intersection of the front yard and side yard property lines.
Okay,
And this is the sign that they proposed. This is version 2. I failed the applicant on what they originally provided to me. I did not think that it met the intention of this specific residential entrance sign, which states that it needs to be at a street entrance. So I worked with the applicant and their team, and they proposed this current plan, which we do approve with conditions.
okay, and it's just a one condition for the location of the sign.
That it has to meet all of the requirements of 88-445, which is the signage code.
Okay. So that kind of covers the two concerns about the location of the sign as well as the size and height of it.
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you. So does that answer your question, Mr. Barthol?
Yes, as long as the setback is off of the property line, that would be fine.
Okay. All right, anybody else from the public that would like to speak regarding consent agenda items?
There's one additional person, Timmy
Sorry.
Trebon.
Sorry about that. I was muted. Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thank you. I had submitted a letter. Me and my wife and my family, we are the closest property owners to the entrance of the development.
Can you confirm which development you're speaking of?
Oh, I'm sorry. The Edison at Bridal Spur.
Okay, condition
My apologies.
11. All right.
Yeah, this is kind of my first rodeo, so apologies.
Yeah.
Our entrance to our driveway is it's almost directly parallel to, it's the closest entrance to the entrance of the Edison and Bridal Spur. I wrote a letter regarding the possibility that the planning of a gate being added to the Edison and Bridal Spur. They want to have an access gate added. I just wanted to confirm that the letter had been read. I just want to see if there were any questions about our concerns. Our main concerns are the traffic on 104th Terrace and the issues that this access gate will impose on traffic and on access to our driveway.
Okay. At this time, I don't think the gate is applicable to the case before us, because right now we're just working on the actual sign and its location for that development. So.
Oh, my apologies.
Yeah. So hopefully that'll actually go to somebody else within the planning department. They can take a look at that as a separate item than what we're hearing today.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to waste anybody's time.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anybody else, Joe, from the public wish to speak about docket items that we have open in our consent agenda?
No.
Okay. So at this time, we'll go ahead and close all public testimony. And any other questions from the commission regarding these cases?
So we're gonna delete conditions 7 and 21 on C8. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, cool.
All right, so I'll take a motion then.
I move to approve docket item C1, C3, C5, C6, C7, C11 as stated on the docket, and move to approve C8 with the deletions of conditions 7 and 21 as discussed.
Okay.
Second.
So I've got a motion and a second, and I'll go through it again for approval of docket items C1, C3, C5, C6, C7, and C11 as written in the staff reports, and then also approval of C8 with removal of conditions 7 and 21. So with that motion, can you take a roll call, please, Lisa?
Mhm. Commissioner Allender,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Beasley. Gotcha. Crowell,
Aye.
Enders,
Aye.
and Hill.
Aye.
Okay, it looks like the motion passes for approval of those consent agenda items. We appreciate everybody coming in to speak on those, and
Thank you.
glad to see them come forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commission.
All right, so with that, let's go ahead and move to our regular docketed items, Joe, and let's begin with any cases that we have continued to a future date.
All right. We have 3 continuance requests. Those are docket items 3, 5, and 8. I'll start with 3, which is case number SUP 2020-00076. A request to approve a special use permit for an office use known as Legacy Center on about 0.15 acres at 1302 Brush Creek Boulevard. The applicant is requesting continuance of this until December 7th without fee. Next one is docket item 5, and there are 2 companion cases, 5.1 and 5.2. 5.1 is CPC 2021-00111. This is a request to approve a rezoning from District M1-5 to District UR Urban Redevelopment to allow for the construction of a townhouse project at 3116 Oak Street. And docket item 5.2, companion case CPC 2021-00163, a request to approve an urban renewal plan for the land clearance for redevelopment authority pursuant to Missouri law section 99.300 through 99.715 at 3116 Oak Street. Staff is recommending both 5.1 and 5.2 be continued to January 4th without fee. And the final continuance is docket item 8, case number ROW 2021-00032, which is a request to vacate a portion of Northeast 76th Street, generally between Flintlock Road on the west and North Church Road on the east. Staff is recommending that request be continued to December 7th without fee.
Okay, any questions from the commission regarding continuance of those docket items stated, 3, 5, and 8? All right, seeing none, I will open it up for public testimony then. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak about the continuance of docket items 3, 5, or 8, please raise your hand and you'll be called upon.
Mr. Chairman, no one's raising their hand.
All right, so we'll go ahead and close public testimony then, and I will open it up for a motion, please.
I move to continue docket items 3, 5.1, 5.2 as listed on the docket, and to continue docket item 8 to December 7th without fee.
Second.
All right, so I have a motion and a second for continuance of docket items 3, 5, and 8 as stated. So Lisa, can you take roll call, please, on that motion?
Commissioners Allender,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Beasley.
Aye. It still didn't
Crowell?
work?
Yep, we heard you.
Okay, thank you.
Aye.
Crowell,
Aye.
Enders,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
and Sadowski.
Aye.
Gotcha.
Okay, looks like the motion passes for continuance of docket items 3, 5.1, 5.2, and 8 to a future date as stated. All right, so let's go ahead and go back to docket item number 1 then.
All right, docket item number 1 is case number SUP 2021-00075. Request to approve a special use permit to allow for the operation of a medical office located at 606 West 48th Street. Andrew Clark is our staff planner.
All right. Good morning, Commissioner Sadowski. I think I missed you on the last consent item.
Good morning.
And this is the last time all of you will see me today. Can you see my screen? Okay. So this is CD special use permit number 75, Dr. Anna Dental at Plaza. And of course, it is located on the Country Club Plaza in the 4th Council District, located at 48th Street in Pennsylvania. The tenant is proposing a dental office with a total of 2,400 square feet, which includes the basement in this square footage amount. Here is the floor plan of the renovation they plan on doing. This is the existing exterior photo looking to the north from West 48th Street. It's currently a vacant shop. This is the proposal. It's a very minimal exterior renovation. I worked with the long-range staff on this to make sure that we're meeting all of the design guidelines in the area plan related to the Country Club Plaza. All they're doing here is updating the doors, adding the gray tile at the bottom, and updating the exterior lighting, and also adding a sign, which we have conditioned to meet all of the code in 88-445 related to signage. Staff does approve this project with conditions, and that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. I just had one question. Is there a time limit on this special use permit? Is it forever?
No, it is not forever. I was working with the applicant and they were working with management on the plaza. We were trying to get a copy of the final lease, but I have implied that the special use permit shall run with when the lease expires, and then it would be renewed. But I was still waiting to get the final dates. So if we have any new information and you would like to discuss that or add that on, please keep me in the loop.
Okay, so if the lease expires, say they rent it for 7 years, their lease expires and they renew their lease, they have to come back at that time to renew the special use permit to
That's
follow
correct.
the new lease. Okay. All right.
Mr. Chair, if I can add, I do think that before BZA takes action on this, we will need to know that date because we'll be responsible for enforcing the condition and we wouldn't know the terms of the lease. And we don't want to really have to know that. We just want to know what the date is. So I think we'll have to know that before we get to BZA. And then I'm not sure also if this commission, certainly you might remember, but the rest of the commissioners may not know that when the Plaza Bowl overlay district was adopted, one of the criteria placed in that was to put a restriction on non-retail uses occupying the ground floor space within plaza tenant spaces. So we've only seen a couple of these come through, but that's why this is before you. Typically wouldn't see an office use requiring a special use permit anywhere. The concern is just to make sure that the storefronts are preserved and that, I think there was a concern also that a lot of the tenant spaces would become office uses and want to make sure that doesn't happen. So that's the reason this is a special use permit.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions from the commission to city staff regarding this case?
So
Yeah, go ahead, Bruce.
I was just going to say, do we need to put a condition in that the permit runs out with the lease?
That condition's there, Commissioner Allender, as Andrew explained, it says it shall expire when the lease expires. I think Andrew and myself are just suggesting that we need to hear from the applicant as to when the lease does expire, so we can specify in the condition ultimately before it's approved, whether that's today or at BZA, specify how many years or a date in the condition.
Right, thanks.
So this one's pretty challenging for me. And Andrew, I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to the idea about why these types of uses have been prohibited in the Plaza Overlay District of the past. So that way I can better understand why this would be appropriate now.
Okay, this is a control measure to maintain the diversity and character of the first floor retail that we know of as the Plaza. So that's why this special use permit is required. And your question is, why are we permitting this to go through?
Well, I guess, and to take a step back and have you dive in a little bit further to the first part, I guess like the intent of prohibiting office use on the first floor.
Okay. Oh, sorry, I cut you off.
No, that's fine. I just like a better understanding of why, long range planning decided to make that part of this district.
Imagine friends or family coming to visit you. You decide to go to Mill Creek Park on a Saturday morning, walk over to the Plaza to do some shopping, and everything on the first floor is closed because it's a medical office on a weekend. So that's a significant reason why that this exists. And we don't want the Plaza just to turn into a single medical destination. We need to maintain that retail. And as we all know, the market ebbs and flows. And if you go anywhere on the Plaza and do a timeline of Google Street View, you can really see how the Plaza evolves every 8 to 10 years. I hope that helps you understand.
Yeah, that definitely does. And I'll save the rest of my comments for after the presentation, but that's, as my fellow commissioners know, my favorite analysis is an opportunity cost analysis. And for me, looking at the opportunity cost of this, it just seems like this puts us on a trajectory that I don't want to see the Plaza on. And if there's any property to protect that type of use, this would be the one to do it.
Yeah, and I'd just like to clarify, this is not a recommendation of the long range planners. It's the ordinance itself, the zoning code restricts office use, and it's not just medical office, it's any office use on the first floor tenant space in the heart of the Plaza must be approved through a special use permit. You can have them by right on second and upper stories. But as Andrew was pointing out, the concern is that when markets shift, that the concern would be that the retail energy that you get from at the street level, the pedestrian activity would be diminished if we allowed too many of the ground floor spaces to become office uses. And also would make them hard to lease back as a retail space if the market went that direction again, because we would be allowing people to change the storefront to potentially remove windows and things like that. And so that's one of the things that we've always tried to keep an eye on when these, we've only had a few of these so far, but when we have the special use permits come through, we want to make sure they're keeping that retail storefront so that it can transition back and that it's still good for pedestrian utilization.
Okay, any other questions from the commission to city staff? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and open up for the applicant and welcome them to this project. So if we can get the applicant promoted.
I'm promoting the applicant right now.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, guys. Can you hear us?
Good morning.
Morning. I'm Amy Gray, Melanie Torres. It is listed as Brandy Atwell in the application. She's no longer with the company.
Okay.
So I appreciate the staff report, and just a couple of points I would like to make is that this is a cosmetic dental office. So really the intention is for it to definitely look like a storefront and have retail display items. And there are walk-in consultations available for teeth whitening and things like that. So it is definitely a foot traffic oriented type business as opposed to a traditional dental office. We'd be happy to answer. We do not have a defined lease yet. I understand we'll need that for BZA, so we'll certainly push both the Plaza and the owner to get that worked out here in the next week or two.
Okay, and you understand you'll have to present that, or at least have the date of when the lease expires provided before you can go through BZA?
Correct, yes.
Okay. I think I had one more question. Has this been brought through? So obviously the approval has been made by the owners of the Country Club Plaza? And it will be, obviously. Kind of a dumb question.
Yes, by the staff representation for the Plaza, correct.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions from the commission regarding docket item 1 to the applicant? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and open it up for any public testimony. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak regarding docket item number 1, please raise your hand and you'll be called upon.
Mr. Chairman, no one is raising their hand.
Okay, so go ahead and close public testimony at this time. And anything else you'd like to say, applicant, regarding this case?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we'll close testimony and leave it just to the commissioners to speak amongst ourselves. If there's nothing to say, then I will take a motion.
So I have a lot of thoughts on this, and
Unfortunately, kind of locked up on us.
in the meantime, if anyone else has any thoughts while I switch.
Well, unfortunately, we didn't hear any of your thoughts because, yeah, you locked up on us.
Okay, is this better?
Sure.
I've switched to a different Wi-Fi. Sorry about that. So as I mentioned, I tend to look at this through an opportunity cost lens of what else would be there otherwise. And in a moment where I would really push for local retail, 1,200 square foot spot seems like a perfect spot for local retail. I think the Plaza has a history where it has something still to prove to Kansas Cityans in terms of equity and diversity. And what I don't want to see is more banks, more medical offices, more insurance companies, more real estate brokerage companies, because those are all the places that can't afford to take retail anywhere. I totally understand why someone would want to have a medical office on the first floor of the Country Club Plaza, but I also think that that's depriving someone else of the opportunity, a business that needs that foot traffic more. And so again, as I see, a new bank on the Plaza, I think we're going to see more banks on the Plaza. I think we're going to see less and less of what I would deem traditional retail. This is not the type of use that I want to see. And I think that although it's one special use permit, it also opens the door for other special use permits. And of course, in a challenging retail environment, these types of users are going to be able to pay far more than most retailers can for that space.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments? Ashley, you look like you're ready to say something.
No, I think Tyler's convinced me of some things, but my first thought is I like the idea that some of these spaces are what I would consider more practical uses, walking to your dentist, going to your eye doctor, things that, like living in Brookside, there's a little more of that, what I would consider dry cleaner, grocery store, etc. And I know some of those have a little more foot traffic, but so my first thought was that maybe this gives a little more practical use to the environment, but I think I agree with Tyler. I think those uses could be better suited in other neighborhoods that maybe are more.
I appreciate that, and I also think that this is great on the second floor. The office, the Plaza area doesn't have any shortage of space on the second floor. There are some large buildings that are currently vacant that aren't owned by the plaza, but that are neighboring the plaza. And so I think that there are tons of medical uses really, really close by if you look at St. Luke's and the way that they've expanded. And so I think there is plenty of opportunity for that type of use and for it to be walkable. But I think we're really robbing a lot of people of an opportunity when we put this here.
Yeah, I agree.
If I remember correctly, that maybe it was on the second floor, but there was a dental facility right in the plaza, I think nearly across from Starbucks at one point in time. And, you know, I do think something like this actually, to your first point, there needs to be, you have to drive to get anywhere. There's a couple of dentists on the edge of the plaza, but I didn't see having something like this as an adverse effect. I think you make some good points, Tyler, but I just didn't see. I thought it was a service to maybe the residents around the plaza that they could walk to the dentist, but there's a couple of others on the edge, I suppose.
Anybody else?
Well, I guess I'd say I appreciate the desire, but ultimately the landlord is going to decide what type of business they're going to have in their property. And I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay. Yeah, I think from my standpoint, obviously initially just thought this would be a good fit for that location, especially improvements they're making. Tyler, I think you brought up some great points about the plaza and the type of retail and business that should be located there. However, I think this particular dental office is not necessarily a traditional teeth cleaning and those kind of things that you do, that it seems like it's more of a cosmetic kind of thing. Teeth whitening, it's a beautification kind of thing. And it just, in my opinion, just kind of similar to other cosmetic stores that are in that area. This is just another way of, doing a cosmetic fix. I don't know the proper terminology. I'm a guy and I don't know those words, so I'm sorry. But it just seems like a cosmetic kind of thing to me.
So I have a quick question now that we're talking to the applicant real quick. Is the plans to be open on the weekend? If they are still on, or did they leave?
No, we're here. Sorry, we're switching our mic back on. Yes, the plan is to be open on Saturdays, not on Sundays, but on Saturdays.
Okay.
Okay. If there aren't any other comments, I'll take a motion, please.
Mr. Chair, for case number 1, approve with conditions as stated in the document.
Okay.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second for approval of docket item number 1 with the conditions stated. Lisa, can you take roll call on that motion, please?
Commissioners Allender,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Beasley,
Aye.
Crowell,
Aye.
Enders,
No.
Hill,
Aye.
Sadowski.
No.
Okay. Looks like the motion passes 5-2 for approval of that special use permit that will go forward to the Board of Zoning Adjustments. So applicant, don't forget to get your date in there on the lease and before you head that way. And we appreciate you coming in. Thank you. All right, with that, let's move on our agenda. Looks like we're on the docket item number 2, please.
Docket item 2 is case number CPC 2021-00166. This is a request to approve a development plan to allow for a major amendment to the previously approved plan for new signage for the project known as the Wesley, which is located at the southeast corner of Broadway and Westport Road. Shu Wood is our staff planner.
Thank you, Joe. This project in front of you is a development plan, and the intention of this development plan is to have a major amendment to the approved signage plan through the ordinance number, through the ordinance number 170407, which was approved by the City Council in July 2020. The project itself is located in the Midtown. More specifically, it's located on the south east corner of Westport Road and Broadway. So it is a mixed-use building with residential units and restaurants and office uses and other commercial spaces. The surrounding land use, including business and surface parking, largely zoned B3-2. The site itself is on B1-5. And this is the view looking east from Westport Road and Broadway. The project is in the middle of this picture. So the applicant has requested a minor amendment to the approved signage plan in July 2021, which is this year. And that was approved through city planning staff to amend the signage to allow a slight increase for the total amount of square footage. And then the applicant decided to amend the signage plan again to have a total number of increase of the signs to up to 3 and a total increase in this square footage of 287. And here are where the changes mostly located. This is the elevation along Westport Road, which is the north facade of the building. The applicant initially proposed, and which was also approved by the City Council, was for tenant B, C, and D to have either a wall sign or a blade sign. The applicant proposes to let tenant B, C, D to have both wall sign and the blade sign. So that results in a total of 98 square footage increase for the signage along Westport. And that's the majority of the changes located for this project. And this is another change for the facade facing Broadway. And this is the north end, which is the corner of Westport and Broadway. The applicant has gave up some square footage and number of signs for tenant A, which was also approved through the minor amendment by staff. And this is the section which is also along the Broadway, but it's the south end of the Broadway facade, which is the corner of Broadway and Archibald Avenue. And the applicant proposed the signage change for tenant E at this corner. So the tenant E will have the the Broadway facade, and the next picture also shown the tenant will also have a section of the facade facing the Archibald Avenue, which is the south facade. So for tenant E, the applicant proposed an increase of 25.78 square feet along the Broadway, and also one additional wall sign up to 162 square feet on the south facade. Staff has reviewed the proposed signage plan and has recommended approval with conditions. I would like to revise my staff report to approval with conditions instead of approval without conditions. I would like to add one condition that states that the ordinance number 170407, including all conditions provided therein, shall remain in full force and effect. The purpose for adding this condition is to clarify that any condition that has been approved by City Council before regarding to this development plan shall stay in place, such as the public improvement requirements, building use and facade. That is the purpose for this condition to be added. I'm open to questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the commission to city staff regarding docket item number 2? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and welcome the applicant. Applicant, welcome. If you don't mind stating your name and address for the record, that'd be great.
Sure. Thank you, Shu, Chairman Corral, and Commissioners. Joe Oakes with the Polsonelli Law Firm at 900 West 48th Place, appearing this morning on behalf of the developer. And joining me today from developers team is Devin Coffey. I think Shu did an excellent job outlining the specific requests that we have before you today. So I'll keep this fairly brief to allow for time to ask questions. And as Shu indicated, This is a major amendment to the development plan for the sole purpose of allowing additional signage, both number and square footage. Building construction is already completed. It was completed as of the third quarter of 2020. Residential space is mostly leased, and the developer is now in the process of marketing and leasing that ground floor commercial space. So we're asking for an increase in the number and square footage and signage up to what is permitted by code. And you know, a lot of this you probably already know, but the reason we're here before you today as a major amendment is just due to the scope of the changes. We're adding 3 signs and additional square footage that puts us out of the 10% threshold for a minor amendment. But again, we want to emphasize we're only requesting what is permitted by code, no deviation or variance here. So one thing I wanted to finally note is, you know, as Commissioner Enders alluded to on an earlier item, it's a challenging market right now for office and commercial real estate. As the global pandemic has severely increased vacancy rates across the board in this sector. And though we're hopeful that the worst is behind us, it's still a tenant's market. And one of the things that the developer is hearing from prospective tenants is the need for signage that's visible to pedestrian and vehicular traffic. So our goal here with this request is just to provide flexibility to prospective tenants up to what is permitted by code. So Commissioner Crowell, I do have some slides. A lot of it is what you've already seen in Shu's presentation. So I'll defer to you on whether you'd like to see it. We predominantly just show elevations from what was previously submitted to now.
I don't necessarily need to see it, but that's speaking for me. Commission, do you want to see what he's got to present? Everybody okay with what we've seen so far? I think we're okay.
Perfect.
Yep. Does that conclude your presentation?
That concludes it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Just for me, I had one question, and that's the wall sign and the blade signs are going to be the same. I mean, it's like I see like a Taco Bell on the one side. So you got the wall sign that says Taco Bell. Is one of the blade signs also going to say Taco Bell on it too?
Correct. So that, yep, in that 10 and A space, which is the corner of Westport Road and Broadway Boulevard, there's no changes there. That tenant is going to be Taco Bell Cantina. So what we're asking for on the north elevation Westport Road side, there's 4 tenant spaces, one of which is that Taco Bell Cantina. In tenant space B, we had already requested a wall and a blade. In C and D, we had requested the option of a wall or a blade sign. Now we're just asking for a wall and a blade sign there.
Okay. Any other questions from the commission to the applicant? Okay. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and open it up for public testimony then. So if there's anybody from the public that would like to speak regarding docket item number 2, please raise your hand and you will be called upon.
Mr. Chairman, no one's raising their hand.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close public testimony then. Anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Oakes?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we'll go ahead and close all testimony regarding docket item 2 and speak amongst the commission. If there's nothing to discuss, I'll take a motion, please.
I move to approve condition number 2 with conditions as stated by Shu.
Second.
Okay, so I got a motion and a second for approval of docket item number 2 with conditions stated. Lisa, can you take roll call, and please note that Commissioner Beasley has stepped away and is not part of this vote. Are you available, Lisa?
Yep, I was just making that note while you were saying that.
All right.
All right. Commissioners Allender,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Crowell,
Aye.
Enders,
Aye.
Hill. I can't hear you. Thumbs up. Gotcha.
Aye. Sorry, I was
Gotcha.
stuck.
And Sadowski.
Aye.
Okay, so it looks like the motion passes 6-0. Thank you for bringing it in and good luck with your project there.
Thank you all.
All right. So moving on, looks like we're up to docket item number 4.
Yeah, that's right. I just need to unmute myself. Docket item 4 is case number SUP 2021-00077. This is a request to approve a special use permit to allow for the construction of a new aquarium at the Kansas City Zoo. I guess I could reference that it's located at 6800 Zoo Drive, but I think most people know where it's at. Anna Nanaski is our staff planner.
Thank you, Joe. So docket item number 4, like Joe said, focuses on 6800 Zoo Drive. There's several zoning types, designations on the existing site. The specific site that we are going to be discussing today is zoned R5, and the applicant is seeking approval of a special use permit to allow for the expansion of parks and recreation use. So this is an overview of where the site is located. We're all probably familiar, but it is located within the Swope Park area in the Swope Park complex. This is a close-up of the site. The entire Swope Park complex is highlighted in yellow. It is roughly 1,805 acres. But the specific site that we were talking about today for the aquarium is on around 64,000 square feet, and it is located within the little circle highlight. This is a picture of a rendering provided by the applicant of the proposed aquarium. This is the associated site plan. The aquarium features, several exhibit areas within the building. There is a service dock and service area. The main entry is to the northeast, and there's also a terrace as well. Lots of landscaping, quite beautiful. This is the review criteria associated with special use permits. Staff believe that they are in compliance with all of them. I kind of want to highlight one of them, which includes number B. Facilities that promote the education and understanding and appreciation of natural environments, flora and fauna, etc., are very beneficial for the community. So we believe that they, in particularly, apply with that review criteria. City staff recommends approval subject to conditions, and special use permits get forwarded to the Board of Zoning Adjustment. In this case, will be heard on December 14th. That concludes my presentation.
Did you just say 2 conditions?
Subject to conditions.
Okay.
In the conditions report attached to the staff report.
Yeah, because there's 7 that I was just making sure.
Yeah, not 2, but to the conditions report.
Gotcha. Okay, any questions from the commission to city staff regarding docket item 4? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and welcome the applicant with us.
Hello. Hello, I'm Steve Salzer with El Dorado Architects, the local architect involved in the project. We're located at 510 Avenida Cesar Chavez in Kansas City, Missouri.
Welcome.
Thank you. I don't have a separate presentation to go through for you all. I can describe the project. If you're familiar with the zoo, you know that Main Street is kind of the main pathway that runs through the zoo. As you enter, you walk past Polar Bear, up into what's considered the topside campus, past the new penguin exhibit. And to date, if you've been out there recently, you'll see construction fencing up between penguin exhibit and the newly completed elephant or newly renovated elephant exhibit. This is a kind of a treed lot, formerly treed lot that back when I was a kid, used to have kind of stone bear grottos down into this area, and it had been overgrown for years and years and abandoned by the zoo. And as part of this project, we're renovating that whole area and inserting this wonderful aquarium there. The aquarium has a footprint of about 31,000 square feet on the exhibit level, a total building area of about 65, just under 65,000 square feet. So a lot of service areas, of course, on the lower level and the upper levels that support the 600,000 gallons of tanks, 300,000 gallons of which will be a very large shark exhibit. We'll have sea otters, warm and cool water touch tanks, and lots of amazing exhibits. So the project is kind of well embedded within the heart of the zoo at the center of kind of the topside campus. Its service access is off of the existing zoo operations gate. Happy to take any more questions about the project.
Okay. One question I had is, you saw the 7 conditions listed. Are you okay with those?
Yes, and we have responded that we will meet those conditions.
Okay. Any other questions from the commission to the applicant? Does this special use permit, it lasts forever then? There's no time limit on this one, I take it? I guess I'm asking staff.
No expiration date has been established.
Okay. All right, so seeing no further questions from the commission to the applicant, let's go ahead and open it up for public testimony. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak regarding docket item number 4, please raise your hand and you will be called upon.
Mr. Chairman, I don't see anyone.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close public testimony. Anything else, Mr. Sauser, about this project? Looks like a fun one.
Yes, we're very excited about it. Nothing further from me.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we'll go ahead and close all testimony and just speak amongst the commission. If there's no discussion, I will take a motion, please.
Can I ask a quick question of the applicant? How long do you think it's going to take to have this built out so we can start coming?
We are targeting the late summer 2023 is the current projection.
Thank you.
But yep, you're welcome.
Okay. I will take a motion then.
I move to approve docket item 4 with conditions.
Second.
Okay, so I've got a motion and a second for approval of docket item number 4. Lisa, can you take roll call on that motion, please?
Commissioners Allender,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Beasley,
Aye.
Crowell,
Aye.
Enders,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
and Sadowski.
Aye.
Okay, so it looks like the motion passes 7-0. Again, thank you for bringing it in. We're excited about seeing it come together, and good luck.
All right, thank you very much.
All right. With that, let's move on to docket item number 6, please.
All right, docket item number 6 is case number SUP 2021-00071. A request to approve a special use permit for outdoor warehouse, wholesaling, storage, and freight movement for TSL Kansas City, located at 811 North Agnes Avenue. Anna Naniski is our staff planner.
Thank you. Docket item number 6 focuses on 811 North Agnes Avenue. It is zoned M1-5, and as just mentioned, the applicant is seeking approval of a special use permit to allow for the expansion of an outdoor storage area. The site is located in the northeastern portion of Kansas City. This is a close-up of the subject site. It is highlighted in yellow. As you can see, this is adjacent to another similar facility in a industrial area. This is the site plan provided by the applicant. Some features in revolving to this plan involves the gravel parking lot, the trailer parking stalls, the shipping container storage. The property will be accessed through the neighboring lot to the east. There are also a row of street trees on the west, and then another entrance off Martin Avenue. The review criteria associated with a special use permit is located on the screen. Staff believes that the proposed project is in compliance with the review criteria. One thing that I do want to mention, that the expansion of this use is compatible with the surrounding area. It is very industrial in nature. And city staff recommend approval subject to corrections and conditions listed in the corrections and conditions report attached to the staff report. And the corrections, we have discussed those and the conditions with the applicant, and they have agreed that the corrections will be revised prior to the Board of Zoning Adjustment meeting, which is again on December 14th. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the commission to city staff regarding docket item number 6? Okay, seeing none, let's go ahead and welcome the applicant to our case.
Anna, no one ever raised their hand to be promoted. Do you know who they're?
Patrick and Allison.
Okay, Allison just raised her hand. I'm promoting Allison. And I'll promote Patrick also.
Mute. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Hi. So I'm Allison Tanner. I'm an attorney at Spencer Fane, and we represent TSL, which is the applicant. TSL owns or leases all the adjacent property around that area and is just trying to expand their storage capabilities. Their primary line of business is shipping and logistical support for the import and export of goods to and from Kansas City, primarily via intermodal methods. And the operations at the TSL facility located at 3115 Nicholson include the management and storage of inbound and outbound shipments, container and trailer storage and maintenance. And as you are probably well aware, upheavals to international trade operations caused by COVID have led to a need to expand operations in that area, as TSL is seeing an influx of more than 3,800 in and outbound containers a week over the Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern intermodal ramps. Most of that was going into the logistics facility in Gardner before, and now it is coming right into the Kansas City area, and they're having to store containers in that area until they can get them on trailers and get them moved over to Gardner. So that is the reason that they're asking for this special use permit. So I would be happy to answer any questions that city staff has with respect to this. We've already made some changes to the site plan in connection with some comments from city staff. And I think it will be a better site plan. We've also made some changes in connection with the public engagement meeting that we had. For one thing, the original site plan, we were just talking about doing gravel onto this site to use it for storage, and the company has agreed now to do it as concrete instead because they are concerned about, there was some concern about dust in that area. And another neighboring property owner was concerned about trees. And so we have revised the landscaping plan a bit to try to accommodate those issues. So let me know if you have any other questions. I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, and you're okay with the rest of the conditions stated in the staff report?
I believe that we are, yes.
Okay. I guess I didn't hear it. What's the time frame on this special use permit?
No expiration date has been established.
Okay.
So can I confirm this says North Agnes? So this is north of the river? It's not in Grandview with the modal stuff out there?
No, no.
This is in East Bottoms, correct?
Yes, exactly.
I can
Thank
pull
you,
up the map
James.
again to help clarify anything if needed.
Yeah, probably an overall map if you have one.
Yeah, because I was just going on the address and to me that was north.
Yeah, if you can believe it, there's parts of the city that's considered north, but it's still south of the river.
Oh my goodness. Just keep us confused around here.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Patrick Cassidy. I'm with Renaissance, civil engineer working on the project.
Thank you, Anna.
The only comments we weren't planning on doing are items 12 and 13. We just want to formally request those to be off as stipulations. So those comments talk about improving Agnes and the existing sidewalk there. We are continuing to work with staff on resolving all of their comments. And we received the latest round of comments on the 28th, and they did not include anything to do with public improvements. So we would just like that stipulation to be taken off, please.
Okay, so you're talking about condition 13, that the east half of North Agnes be approved to city standards?
Yes.
Okay, and you said number 12.
Yes,
Regarding,
and 12.
and can you tell us why you're going to have trouble getting a floodplain certificate for this area?
Oh, is 12 the floodplain certificate?
Yes.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, 12 is okay.
So you must be worried about 14 then. About the north.
Oh no,
half
I
of
can
Agnes.
share I can share my screen if it helps the applicant see what conditions related to half street improvements. But those
Yep.
are okay. I'll go ahead and do that. It looks like it's 13 and 14.
Yeah, I was mistaken there. I meant to say 13 and 14.
And Mr. Chairman, this is Stacy Lowe with Land Development. Those two conditions are mine. There has been no direct communication with me regarding those conditions since they were added to the case. They were made aware of these conditions would be triggered as part of the Development Review Committee meeting. That's when I noticed them, and they were added to the review. That's the information on the background as I'm aware of at this time. There has been no communications within the last week regarding these conditions.
Okay. Joe, can you pull up an overall map as to the exact location of this and kind of on the city maps system?
Yeah, sure. Bear with me a moment. Can you guys see the parcel viewer map?
Yeah.
So this is, Anna, I don't know if you can elaborate, but I do believe the yellow parcel is the parcel they're expanding onto. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And this is all part of the Northeast Industrial Area, I take it?
Correct.
Yeah, it's these bottoms. This is a street view from June of 2019 of the site. That's Martin right there. The portion that abuts the property. And this is Agnes, the portion that abuts the property here.
Yeah, I just tried to travel about 1.5 miles on Google Street View to look at the roads, and it certainly makes sense that as we see development, we want people to improve streets. I feel as though I don't have a great sense of when it's best to stick to it and when it's best to be flexible and realize that this would be the only improved, area with gutters.
Yes, I think our client's concern was if they were required to make those street improvements, it would be the only area in that area that had those street improvements. And if they're required to spend that much money, they're probably just not going to continue to apply for this special use permit, because all they want to use this for is a concrete pad to store trailer chassis and storage containers on. They'll just have to find another way to deal with it, because they just can't afford to spend the kind of money that they would be required to spend with those street improvements.
And all that vegetation is going to get cleaned up.
Stacey, can you maybe for the benefit of the commission elaborate on what all is included in a half street improvement? When we say that, it's not just the street, right? It's also sidewalk, for example.
And storm sewers.
Go ahead, Stacey.
Thank you, Joe. Correct. The half street improvements typically improve the replacement of pavement on that half of the street, the installation of curb and gutter, storm sewer, sidewalks, and street lighting. It's a requirement to bring it up to the city's currently adopted design standards by the Public Works Department. We put this requirement in typically on every project that has frontage on an unimproved street to ask that the streets be improved to benefit the city, so the city doesn't have to take on the burden of doing these street improvements in the future.
So the reason I asked Stacey to elaborate is just so that you know what all is included in those standards for half street improvements. You guys have the authority to make a recommendation as to whether those are modified. The ordinance outlines a process for modifications to those standards. So for example, if you found it inappropriate to have them do storm sewer, but you do think curb and gutter or sidewalk or half the actual repavement of the street is necessary, you can specify that if you would like.
Yeah, my intuition is certainly that based upon this project, it seems excessive and that for the use of it and the surrounding areas, but it'd be nice to have a better sense of what the best practices are for when those exceptions should be made.
And to be clear, they are doing street trees on the west side, so there is a certain amount of vegetation that they're adding, correct?
Yes.
I mean, my main thing is we had a similar case up in just north of here a while ago, and the request was not to do sidewalks, and I can see the street improvements and the stormwater, but I mean, I think what we're seeing even in industrial areas, I mean, there are homes in this area, and there are places where people walk, that if we don't put in sidewalks, we come back later and have to spend a ton of money trying to fix the situation. So I personally would like to see sidewalks. That's just me, but.
Anybody else have any questions for the applicant regarding this? And
I guess I have a question about, this is so close to the Missouri River. So my first thought is, what are we doing in terms of stormwater management or flood management or anything like that? So, but that would be my only thing, is like the macro question of like, if we don't improve sewers and gutters in this area, what, implications is that related to stormwater management? Because I don't know if I necessarily agree sidewalks are necessary, given zooming out, there's just not very many places I would see people traversing by foot. But
yeah, I can speak briefly to that. We haven't studied it in depth quite yet, but this site was once, I believe, a church and a school. So it has some history of impervious area. And the site is also already inundated by the 100-year storm.
Commissioner Sadowski, as you can see in the staff report, conditioner number 12 mandates that the developer obtain a floodplain development certificate. This area is also protected partially by the levee, so they will have to go through water services for the floodplain review, and that will also be a key portion to ensuring any of the stormwater is managed appropriately.
okay. I just wanted to make sure our decision wasn't kind of the last point of review for stormwater.
No, because this is federal floodplain, there are many other requirements that go above and beyond the city that will have to also be met.
Great. Okay. I mean, my opinion is that we don't enforce it, and if there's some stormwater considerations that need to be made later, that those are done based on the floodplain review.
yeah, I think on this particular site, once they pave it over with concrete, then they have to address the stormwater with the 1.5 inches. They have to store it on site, the 40 hours to 72 hours. So they have to provide something on there. Knowing this industrial area fairly well, just some of the work I'm doing outside of the city planning commission, there's a lot of work on Front Street to replace that, basically from 35 all the way to 435. The first phase will be done that goes from 435 west to Choteau Traffic Way. And then the rest of it has kind of stalled because of stormwater management in this area, needing a place to put some detention for the roadway as well as some of the adjacent properties. Some of the concern in this whole area is streets and the condition of streets, especially once you get off of Front Street and the potholes and the tearing up of the streets and that kind of thing. I don't see in this particular location that it needs a, at this time, it doesn't need the curb and gutter yet, because it's, there's nothing for it to tie into or to drain into or to feed into, simply because there's nothing on either side of it. But as far as the road condition itself, I would be concerned about that as a whole on this kind of thing. It's just one piece of many, needs to be fixed down there. So that's my concern on that. I don't think there's going to be any utilities, so to speak, on that would fall under doing a half replacement of the roadway, with the new utility code. But I think something as far as the roadway, and do we have is the standard condition on there about reviewing the public infrastructure around it? Is that a part of one of the conditions? I gotta go back. I don't see it. Probably because it's, the request is to do the half street improvements. So
what condition are you looking for?
Oh, we usually
Chairman
have the
Crowe.
standard condition about reviewing the improvements within the public right of way and having a, you know, a letter by the licensed engineer or somebody similar to that reviews that and make sure that it's up to code. But in this particular location, a lot of the infrastructure is not there, hence the conditions 13 and 14. So I've gone in a circle. But in my opinion, I don't see the full improvements of that. Certainly they need to take a look at the street, and that's my opinion. Any other questions from the commission regarding some of these conditions?
I would agree with you on the street. You know, the streets down there are shocking and lots of potholes. I agree. They've just been torn up by trucks over the years by the looks of it.
Okay.
Oh, so I have a question then. If the requirement is for him to do half of the street, would the city then partner and do the other half so it's all done at one time?
Probably not, simply because of funding constraints that the city is under for these kind of projects.
Stacy, were you going to say something?
No, Commissioner Allender, the chair covered it for me.
I guess I don't, maybe this is just not understanding how that works. I don't understand how you do half the street. And Kobe, maybe you can explain this based on your expertise, but I just don't know how that works in a way that you're going to change the slope, I assume, in some way.
Well, generally, if you're going to do the full pavement or the full street improvements, yes, you'd go from the center line of the road out, you know, the designated feet based on the road type, and you would just make sure that it's up to code as to what's required by the Public Works Department. So you look at the road and you add the curb. You also have to add the stormwater management on that as well, and then put the sidewalk and the lighting in. So there's a lot to do to get it up, you know, to code to do just a half road improvement. And it's probably a little much in this particular location. Again, there's nowhere for the stormwater to go, nowhere for the sidewalk to go. The curbs, the lighting would be the only lit place. I would assume they're going to have lighting on their side itself. So as far as a road improvement, it could be a mill and overlay, or depending on some of the locations there, if they have to do full depth replacement on the roadway in some sections. And that'd just be half the road.
I guess, I don't know, it just, to me, doing half the road seems a little inefficient. And it would be something where you'd have to go back later and finish the rest. So I don't know. I'm just still going to say I don't think it's necessary for this particular project.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of that then. I agree, actually.
Always just keep it and make city council make the decision.
Well, it won't go through city council because they're just looking for a special.
Oh yeah. Is it?
I guess wherever we see like a lot of uses of the same use, it seems like that's where it would warrant like a more macro investment either by the surrounding property owners or with the city to do a full replacement to allow them to better utilize it. Because I imagine it's not great for the trucks to continue to be on 4 roads. So that's my thought is, can we zoom out and do a more macro approach with those surrounding users that could all benefit for better roadways?
Yeah, I think all these thoughts and questions are really good. Unfortunately, you always see projects, and it's never or rarely is it a good time at the time of a project to have these conversations. Does Stacy and I and my staff are bound by what the ordinance provides, and it simply says thou shalt make public improvements, and it doesn't tell us, it doesn't provide any gray area. It doesn't give us any authority to tweak them or make a suggestion that's different from the full slate of public improvements. And it even says that they have to be half street. So I think the best the commission can do in terms of zooming out and dealing with this kind of holistically is look at what the ordinance says and maybe potentially suggesting some ordinance amendments that would provide some guidance to staff and to the applicants, frankly, as to when improvements are necessary and to what degree they may be necessary for certain types of projects, so that when you guys are presented with these questions, you have something to go on and we have the ability to make a recommendation that is based upon some sort of reasonable criteria rather than a black and white, you shall make all the improvements, but only for half the street, because that's essentially what the code says currently.
So isn't that the type of thing we put on the list of things we wanted to address as a commission we could recommend improvements on?
Yes, I think we could probably, what I would suggest is have a work session topic where we talk about this outside of the context of a development project and what the code requires staff to recommend to you all and what that means for projects as they come through. And then you can, based upon that, determine whether there should be a text amendment to the ordinance and potentially initiate that. You can recommend that the council initiate that.
Okay, I'm sorry, Bruce, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think I'm going to change my mind. It makes no sense to do half a street improvement. You should do all of it, and then it's only for the improvement's only for the length of the block, right? So I think the stormwater you answered. Thanks, Ashley, for bringing that up. I think I'm fine. I'll not to do the street improvement.
You're saying to keep the street improvement or to leave it off as?
Oh, I think there's no improvement around there, so I think I'm fine to take the condition out.
Okay. All right. So I think we spoke a lot about conditions 13 and 14. Anything else? Questions from the commission to the applicant? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead.
Sorry, one question. My computer had or my second computer had crashed. So took me a minute to pull it back up. I just wanted to confirm from the applicant where the traffic was coming from. It's coming from the existing parcel, right? And so some of this, which we already discussed, is kind of moot in the sense that we're not adding extra traffic to the east or to the west. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. It's coming from the east to the west, I believe. I don't have it in front of me right now, but it's coming and it's going to be turning in onto Nicholson. So it's not going to be turning onto Agnes at all. The only reason that we were adding the extra entrance at the end of Martin was to have a second entrance for emergency vehicles to be able to, access the property another way. But we don't anticipate any additional traffic or very minimal additional traffic on Agnes or Martin.
Thanks.
Yeah, but it does look like you have access on the south on Martin with some parking spaces there for employees. So there's going to be some traffic down there.
No, we've revised the site plan to take out that employee parking. It wasn't necessary, and when we submit the revised site plan, that's not going to be included anymore. Just the entrance as an emergency entrance for vehicles.
Okay. All right. Anything else from the commission to the applicant? Okay, seeing none, let's go ahead and open it up for public testimony. If there's anybody from the public that would like to speak regarding docket item number 6, please raise your hand and you'll be called upon.
We have a Larry Howard who's raised his hand, and a C. Corcoran that has also raised their hand. I'm promoting both.
Okay. Thank you. So Larry, as you bring yourself off mute, if you don't mind stating your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you for having me. My name is Larry Howard, and I own a couple buildings to the west of this property. And we've got several concerns with this project. One is the stormwater retention. Anytime we do a project in the area, we have to provide stormwater retention. And we're not asking these people to do this at this time. The next is the emergency gate placement. We know that as soon as it gets approved, the gate's going to be open and we're going to have truck traffic right through there. So with that being the case, I don't think it's fair to have all that truck traffic down around the park and through the park where there's hundreds of children playing on football night. So the next thing is the dust. The dust is incredible in this area, and if they're not doing the watershed and they're doing chip and seal, it's not going to retain as well as concrete would. And so those are my issues with it.
Okay, thank you. Can you? So I got the gate, dust,
and watershed.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Can I ask what the name of the park is you're referring to?
Heim Park. It's 2 blocks to the west of the property. And as you know, the football league has contracted the park, and on football night, whatever it is, I think it's Thursdays and Saturdays, there's 400 or 500 kids down here. And as we know, the container trucks are very aggressive drivers. And if they're coming down through the park, that's not going to end well.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up was.
It's C. Corcoran.
Okay.
Yes, members of the commission. My name is Chip Corcoran. I'm also with Renaissance Infrastructure Consulting. So we're working on this project. Just wanted to confirm that one of the plan corrections required was removal of the 6 parking spaces. Also would like to advise that that entrance is for emergency access only, and that the site will be paved. And so we're not, we're actually removing any unpaved surfaces. So all the vehicles will be on a paved surface, and we'll be complying with the city stormwater ordinance with regard to stormwater management.
Which access did you say it was an emergency access? Is that the one to the south?
It's this, yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else, Joe, from the public?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close public testimony. So with that, there are a few items that were brought up. So I'll let the applicant respond to those items. regarding this project. Obviously with the gate, dust, the watershed management, and then some of the truck traffic. Do you mind speaking to those, please?
Well, my understanding is that the entrance on Martin is going to be gated and it's just going to be available to use if there's an emergency. So we don't anticipate any truck traffic on that street. That's just a second emergency entrance. And as to dust, originally when we were submitting this, we did just anticipate putting down gravel or rock on that lot, which would have added to the dust problem in that area. But in response to the public engagement meeting, the client has agreed to do concrete on that site instead of gravel. So there shouldn't be any additional dust to what's already there. And then the I think as Chip addressed, the stormwater, that we do plan to comply with stormwater management issues and requirements on the site. So I think all of those issues are being dealt with.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else you'd like to add? Applicant?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, at this time, we'll go ahead and close all testimony and speak amongst the commissioners. If there's nothing to discuss, I will take a motion. So it sounds like to me that just the road improvements on both Martin and Agnes, everybody's okay to waive those. It seems like it's an all or none kind of thing. Is the way I'm understanding it.
Sure, Carl, I'll go ahead and make the motion. I move to approve docket item number 6 with the removal of conditions number 13 and 14.
Second.
Okay, so I've got a motion and a second. Is there any other further discussion from any of the commissioners? All right, seeing none.
I just had a comment, could we?
Sure.
And this isn't really related to this project. I just am a little alarmed with like how many children are coming to this park that's right in the middle of a very highly trafficked industrial area. And so I feel like this is a question larger than this project, but why is that park right in the middle of all of that activity? And whether that could be better located. So I just wanted to point that out, as I just don't think that that makes sense for that activity to take place so close to all of that industrial truck traffic. So
I just looked it up. That park is right there off of Chestnut that goes into well, if you take the bend, then you end up over on Shoto. So it is some residents around there, and it is flat and level. And it's, if I remember correctly, Knuckleheads is on the other side of that area. But to look at the park, you don't see all that truck activity in the park when you're there from what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
No, it is north of Knuckleheads. And they actually got football goals up on the field. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, it was just a larger question about, like, you know, where's the best place to put parks, knowing that kids will probably run around on adjoining blocks, and this doesn't seem like the best location. So just pointing that out.
All right. So Lisa, I've got a motion and a second. Can you take roll call, please, on that motion? And that's just to revise that or rehash it out. It's for approval of docket item number 6 with removal of conditions 13 and 14. Lisa?
All right. Well, I'll go ahead.
Oh, okay.
I'll go ahead. Yeah, I'll go ahead and call it.
Go ahead.
Allender.
Aye.
Beasley.
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Enders,
Aye.
Crowell,
Aye.
and Sadowski.
Okay, so it looks like the motion passes 7-0. We appreciate you coming in, bringing your project in and enjoying the conversation we had. I think there's some things to discuss on that as we move forward. So good luck with it as you guys move forward on your job too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. So with that, I think we're to docket item. See, is that it? That's not it, is it?
7, isn't
Can you
it?
guys
Should
hear
be
me?
on
Yep,
7.
sorry, 7. Docket item
No.
7. So last one of the day.
Yes, Lisa, we can hear you now.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All right, docket item 7 is case number 1743V. A request to vacate an alley located south of East 31st Street between Mersington on the west and Myrtle Avenue on the east, as required by case number 14892-P. Zach Nelson is our staff planner.
Thank you. So to begin, kind of a little bit of background, this case has an unusual case number because the original application for this case was submitted back in 2018 and it never got fully closed out. So that's kind of the reasoning behind that case number. So this is located south of the river in the heart of the city area, about a quarter of a mile southwest of I-70. And then a little bit more specifically, this is in between Mersington Avenue to the west and Myrtle Avenue to the east, south of East 31st Street. And then this is, as Joe mentioned, a request to vacate a portion of right-of-way, which was previously an alley. And then the building just to the north is a Family Dollar. And so a little bit of background, this, the Family Dollar was approved back in 2018. And one of the conditions of approval for that was that this right-of-way was to be vacated. And that went through the City Plan Commission back in 2018. However, for whatever reason, it never fully got through council. And as a result, over 6 months lapsed. And as a result, this is required to go back before the City Plan Commission. And that's why this is before you today. So very briefly, this is just a site plan showing the Family Dollar that was approved. There is a curb cut that exists on the east side here. However, this curb cut on the west side was not built, and instead the site plan was altered slightly, and so there is now a curb cut on East 31st Street. And then these dumpsters were relocated in the area to be vacated. So this is looking west. This is what the right-of-way looks like currently. The alley obviously is not accessible, and there's a fence here now. This is just kind of a slightly different angle. There's a new retaining wall as well. And here you can see the dumpster enclosures that are located there as well. So staff is supportive of this vacation. Again, this is kind of just a cleanup, and staff recommends approval subject to 2 conditions in the staff report. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, any questions from the commission to city staff regarding this case? Okay, seeing none, let's go ahead and welcome the applicant.
Zach, is Marty Arling the applicant? Yeah, he is. Okay, I've promoted him.
Yeah, and then could you also promote Derek Schroeder if he's on as well?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Welcome.
This is Martin Arling with Caw Valley Engineering, 8040 North Oak Trafficway, KC Mo. And as Zach explained, this is an old project. It's actually one I never worked on. It was from a previous employee, and I'm kind of picking up the pieces. Just a little more history. We were doing an ALTA survey on this site for the sale of this property, and noticed that looking at the development plan, that the alley was not vacated per the development plan requirements. So that got me started with the owner and getting this resolved and with Zach, and we're finally getting to that point. No issues. The only comments back we heard looking at the paperwork on the utility responses were from Evergy, Google Fiber, and AT&T, and they're all on the same structures. They're all on overhead poles, and that's the easement that has to be retained for them. There was also a comment from Public Works about a transformer and street lighting, and I am not aware of any issue with that. And I'm fine to agree with the stipulation because I looked at the site, I didn't see anything there. And it could be that it got taken care of when the project was built. So, back to the easement for the utilities, I assume, because I think the stipulation says the full width utility easement and any existing utilities be retained. And we are obviously retaining utilities. And if I can just work with Evergy on that, we'd prefer to do half the alley, the full width, but half the distance to where the poles are and retain that easement. And if it's just between us and Evergy, we can work that out. Because that, as you can see from the pictures that Zach showed, that we've got dumpsters and in the way of the rest of the alley. So if you have any questions for me, I'm willing to take them.
Okay, any questions from the commission to the applicant regarding this case? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and open it up for any public testimony. If there's anybody from the public that would like to discuss docket item number 7, please raise your hand and you'll be called upon.
Mr. Chairman, no one's raising their hand.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close public testimony then. Doesn't sound like there's too many questions, applicant. So, Mr. Arling, so I imagine anything else you'd like to say?
No, we'll just get this resolved and get it all cleaned up.
Okay, sounds good. So at this time, we'll go ahead and close all public testimony, and I'll either take a motion or if there needs to be discussion amongst the commissioners. So let's do that.
I move to approve docket item number 7 with conditions.
Second.
Okay, so a motion and a second for approval of docket item number 7. Lisa, can you take roll call on that motion, please?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Commissioners Allender,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Beasley,
Aye.
Crowell,
Aye.
Enders,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
and Sadowski.
Aye.
Okay, so it looks like the motion passes 7-0 for approval of docket item number 7. Appreciate you bringing it in and good luck getting it cleaned up.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so with that, that takes us through our agenda items. Joe, is there anything else we wanted to talk through for a little bit?
Sorry, I'm muted. We had previously talked about potentially discussing the 2022 schedule. Is that something you'd still like to talk about?
Yes, everybody have time for that, to do that for the next, 15 minutes, maybe? Or what are you thinking, Joe?
Yeah, it shouldn't take more than that, I would imagine.
Okay. So we can do that. So a couple meetings ago, back in October, we talked about several items that I'd like to have a little training or discussion on. So trying to get together, put together those training sessions. And one of the first things that Joe's wanting to present now, and it's pretty easy to do, is the kind of the time frame and schedule that it takes for a project once the applicant signs their thing and submits it in to finally getting to us, and just going through that process. And I imagine before our next meeting, maybe Joe, we can work out just what the other items are we've talked about and kind of what we're wanting to add. Is that, you think that's possible for a training session?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this one was kind of a low hanging fruit kind of thing, and thought since the agenda was a little bit shorter than usual for our cases today, that we could do this. So take it away, Joe.
All right. Thank you, Kobe. So what I think would be most helpful to show you guys visually is our schedule that has been put out for 2022. And I can talk with you. I'm going to show you the internal side of it so that you know so that we can show you what staff is doing kind of behind the scenes. And bear with me a moment while I pull that up. So I'll show you first what the public schedule looks like, if it lets me select it. It's weird. It made me jump out of the screen share to do this. All right, can everyone see this? Do I need to zoom in to see anything? Okay, so basically it's important to look at one cycle. Because otherwise it gets too complicated. But if you look at the rows 17 and 18 here, this is our January 4th meeting right here under column J. And basically what it shows here is the application. The first column is the application deadlines for that CPC hearing date. So for example, and the reason there's 2 rows is, and this is a new feature of our calendar, is because there are some cases that warrant a review by development review committee, and other cases that do not warrant review by our development review committee. And that's always been the case. It's just that we've had the same deadline for all application types for several years now. And as a result, the cases that don't warrant review by development review committee end up having to have the same length of time between the application deadline and CPC. And in reality, they don't really, now that we're full or close to being fully staffed, it's really not necessary for them to have that length of time. They can be applied for at a later date. So that's what you see reflected here in the 2 rows in 17 and 18. So row 17 would reflect cases that warrant review by development review committee. And generally those are going to be anything that's on your regular docket, or most items that are on your regular docket that have a plan associated with them. So an exception to that would be, for example, a regular rezoning, a rezoning without plan. That would be something that's on your regular docket, but doesn't go to development review committee because there's nothing to review for all these various agencies. The only people that really need to look at a rezoning application without a plan is my staff and our long range planning staff, because there is no plan associated with it. But basically anything else with a plan that is on our regular docket or regular agenda is going to fall on row 17. Anything that's on our consent docket is usually going to be on row 18, or again, something like a rezoning without a plan would be on row 18. So it's basically allowing what is shown as a 5-week cycle in terms of from application deadline to planning commission for those types of cases, whereas the ones that require development review committee would be on a 7-week cycle from November 17th or November 15th application deadline to January 4th. And of course, November 15th was yesterday morning. So we just started the first cycle with this deadline yesterday. So what you're seeing here across the top in terms of the large columns here is the application submittal deadline. And then what we're showing here is when staff comments are posted, and those are what we post to Compass KC. None of these are existing processes, but basically what occurs between November 15th and December 3rd is a bunch of administrative tasks in the background. And if I could easily toggle over to the internal calendar, I would show you that, but I can't do that without stopping the presentation, unfortunately. There is a internal development review committee meeting. So what you don't see here is that this is existing as well, an existing process, is that the staff development review committee or the development review committee meets as a staff only group prior to posting comments. And the reason we do that is to try to discuss them. Some of our reviewers are just looking at water mains, for example, and they're not really looking at the bigger picture. And the goal of that is for my staff to help guide those reviewers as to what the bigger picture is. And then what is happening is after that meeting, which occurs on the Wednesday prior to December 3rd, in the case of this one cycle, is that the planner then collects all the comments from that reviewer. And then we work internally to, and this is a new thing, by the way, we work internally to validate those comments in the sense that, are those comments applicable to this project? Are they proportional to this project? And if we think that they're not, we are going back to that reviewer and trying to have that conversation. So keep in mind that that conversation has to occur just in a 2 business day time frame, and that can be extremely challenging, but that's what we're trying to do. So it has to occur on Thursday or Friday prior to December 3rd in the case of this cycle, because those comments have to be posted late at the end of the day, as you see here on that Friday. And then after that, the applicant has between December 3rd and 13th to review those comments. And they, one new thing that we started asking for last May, so it's not totally new. It was last May when it was brought in, is a response letter. And the response letter is pretty common in other communities. It's a new thing for Kansas City since last summer. And the response letter just helps us understand if they understand our comments and if they have questions about our comments or if they object to them. And then that helps us prepare for development review committee on the 15th, which is 2 days later. And at that meeting, the applicant is invited to attend and sit at the table with the same staff that reviewed their application at the first development review committee. And what we try to do because of volume is it's not a freewheeling discussion. It is more targeted towards what they had questions on based upon their response letter. So if we gave them, 20 or 30 comments and they accepted and acknowledged 25 of those 30, but there was 5 that they had questions on or that they objected to, we would focus in on those 5. And again, this is all stuff that we started to implement last summer. So you're just starting to see some of the fruits of that discussion happening. But the goal is to try to reduce the amount of questions about conditions and corrections at CPC. We're trying to create venues for there to be discussion prior to planning commission so that those issues can be resolved. And at the end of the day, sometimes they can't be resolved, and that's why we have a planning commission. But it's really to try to find out what are the issues that really need to be focused in on for the planning commission to decide versus ones that are just misunderstandings between the applicant and staff. or that just need some further discussion between the applicant and staff before we understand each other's perspective, and then sometimes we delete our condition or correction or modify it, or they end up agreeing to comply with it. So that's the point of that development review committee meeting. Then the following Monday, they are required to resubmit. The resubmittal requirement for plans was something that we've been encouraging for a number of years. However, we just started requiring that last summer. So that's a relatively new thing for Kansas City. And the purpose of that is to see if we can reduce the amount of corrections and conditions that are recommended to the Planning Commission, but also improve the quality of both of them. Following that conclusion of that resubmittal, there's a 5-day review period of that. So staff has 5 days to review that. At the end of that week, on the 5th day, we offer a CPC prep meeting with the applicant. And the purpose of that, for example, on the last case you had today, or the second to last, there were some questions about conditions and deleting those. And I personally was not prepared, for example, to discuss those because I was not aware that they had a concern with those conditions. That's the point of the CPC prep meeting and the development review committee meeting, is to try to identify those issues so that we can be prepared to either amend our condition, delete it, or be responsive to it at Planning Commission. The CPC prep meeting is not mandatory. It's just optional for if the planner or the applicant has unresolved questions for each other that they want to iron out before the planner writes their staff report. Another side goal, I guess you could say, of a CPC prep meeting is to identify earlier if there needs to be a continuance, so that we don't have, although we've made, I think, a lot of strides here, we still have, a few instances just like today where the agenda set a case was going to proceed, but it actually needed to be continued. And that's just because those decisions get made by either us or the applicant, usually both, between the time our agenda is published and the time of the hearing. And we're not ever going to be able to get rid of all of those instances, but we're trying to cut down on those so that the public and the commission have a better understanding of what will actually be heard at the hearing. And so the goal would be that with this CPC prep meeting, it'll really help clarify all that for staff and the applicant so that we have more clarity with the Planning Commission when we get to you guys.
I have some like kind of layperson questions. So
sure.
One is, what are the specific, so you said some of it we're already starting to see the fruits of, parts of this being implemented previously. What are the major parts that are changing?
The major parts that are changing is on the calendar or in the process?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Well, let's start with the calendar. The calendar is, for the public facing calendar, has the response letter is relatively new. There's a response letter requirement in column C. The CPC prep meeting is also relatively new. The applicant has always had the option of attending development review committee. It used to be when I first started here that in every case, the applicant always had to attend development review committee. However, it was the first time staff would have met to discuss it too. And there was a service analysis performed regarding the department's efficiency several years ago. And one of the recommendations of the service analysis is that that meeting not occur that way, because you had staff for the first time discussing a project, but also doing it in front of the applicant. And so in my observation, that meeting was a big waste of time. Frankly, it took a very long time to work through all the cases because of the way it was handled. So we went away from having the applicants in every meeting and only there when necessary or when requested. However, one of the things we've heard since then over the past couple of years, especially because of an increasing volume and workload, but also a reduction in staff that we're just now recovering from, is that in the absence of having that scheduled meeting, it's very difficult to get a hold of staff and discuss the comments with staff. So one of the things we started doing last summer is we started requiring an applicant meeting, and the big reason why there's been changes in the schedule, in addition to volume and staffing, the other big reason is because we've been trying to accommodate that into the schedule without significantly altering the length of the schedule. And we think we struck a solution by moving up the staff development review committee meeting 1 week earlier than it previously was held within the cycle, so that we can bring in the applicant development review committee meeting. And I apologize for all these terms. I realize it's kind of overwhelming, but what you see here on the calendar in column D as development review committee is the applicant version, because this is the public calendar. There is a prior one that actually occurs in each cycle for staff only. But the goal of that is like I've already stated, is just to iron out the issues with the comments that staff has provided. But that is relatively new, that we're requiring applicants to come back to that so that we can have that conversation. And as I mentioned, the CPC Prep Meeting is new. The only other things that are new on this calendar, and they're really for information only, is we added the BZA hearing dates, which is really only applicable to special use permits, because that's the only case type that both the Planning Commission and the BZA act on. But we added that because we do have a number of customers for special use permits that just want to see on paper, what's my schedule? And we've never been able to provide that until this year when we integrated it into your Planning Commission schedule.
I guess that, so what I'm gathering, this might be totally wrong, is that you're adding more to the process in the hopes that it gets all things standardized, meaning perhaps in the past, while there might have been a shorter schedule, a lot of people didn't actually get through on that timeline because things would come up that weren't fully resolved, that could have been resolved if they had been asked to meet with staff earlier, if that makes sense. And so now by standardizing it and adding potentially more steps, the hope is that it standardizes everything, and then the full bulk of things that get through will go through faster.
Yeah, so let me zoom way out to answer that question. So what typically happens is a project gets filed, staff reviews it, and we provide written comments to the applicant. The applicant then has always had the option to respond to those comments in writing or by submitting revised plans, or both, but it was never required. And what would happen in about half the cases, the customer would provide revised plans, and we would then send those revised plans out to our reviewers who had comments the first time around. And we would then take everything forward to Planning Commission, regardless of what the comments were. I mean, there are exceptions to that. For example, there may not have been public engagement, but generally speaking, it didn't matter what the comments were. We took the case forward to Planning Commission, but there was no requirement that the applicant meet with us, and there wasn't really a built-in opportunity for them to do that. They, of course, could always try to reach out to us and schedule a meeting, but admittedly, that's been difficult for them to do the past few years because of the staffing issues and the volume issues. So what we heard from our customers is that we want to discuss this stuff with you guys before Planning Commission. And what we've always been trying to do for your guys' benefit is to try to minimize the amount of discussion at the meeting about the details of the condition and not have anyone be surprised by that, whether it's you all or us or the customer. And unfortunately, without the opportunities for there to be a discussion with staff prior to Planning Commission, there were a lot of surprises for everyone. And so that's what we're trying to fix by adding this. There's not really, the opportunities existed on an ad hoc basis to do that. to call staff or email staff and try to meet with us in advance. But as we've heard from customers, that's difficult to do. And we agree. It's difficult for us to accommodate that on an ad hoc basis as well. So we're trying to build in those two opportunities to do that prior to Planning Commission. What we've also heard from many other customers is your schedule in the past just showed me when I get to CPC. It doesn't show me when I get final approval, which a lot of cases require additional approval from Board of Zoning Adjustment or City Council. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. And this schedule gives them those timeframes. It's always been the policy of the city that the plans, if there's comments on plans that require the plans to be revised, those have to be revised before plan or city council. That's always been the case. And so what has often occurred, so what that means is that the critical path from beginning to end in terms of when you get your final approval, whether it's from BZA or city council, is the same today as it was historically. It's just we're moving up we're moving up resubmittal to prior to CPC. Historically, you did not have to do that. And so as a result, we would have a lot of our comments, if you actually look at our comment letters, are really questions. It's more about like we're trying to understand the proposal. So a lot of our comments that we would recommend to you all in our staff reports really aren't final, in the sense that if we did not get a resubmittal or have an opportunity to meet with the customer, or ideally both, we would not necessarily have the best corrections or conditions to recommend to you all because we haven't had those opportunities. So we're taking that resubmittal requirement that exists now between Planning Commission and CPC, or between Planning Commission and BZA, and moving it to before CPC, so that we can have a more wrapped up recommendation for you all. And that's really the big picture.
And one of the things that scares me looking at this is like, we're working on a project that's under contract, and knowing that often things come up and delays happen, knowing that a best case scenario is a 6-week process, and knowing that things come up. If there were areas where things could be expedited, because if there are certain things that are less nuanced, then it seems like an intimidating timeline in that sense, that your best case scenario is 6 weeks, because a lot of people won't let you go under contract for your money goes hard after 3 months, and then all of a sudden I think that's where we see some of the urgency with some of our applicants.
I had a quick comment, maybe suggestion. You said I think the goal is that if there are disagreements that come before City Planning Commission, that they're kind of identified beforehand. And I was wondering if there's a way to, maybe you guys don't want to do it for different reasons, but maybe identify those in the staff report. Because I think even just like bolding those different conditions, I think would help us as we're reviewing it before, but also as we're kind of going through. And you guys do that generally with the presentation, but as you said, sometimes there's surprises, right? And so to eliminate surprises, we can kind of go back and evaluate those comments quickly without kind of reading through everything. But that's just a small suggestion. I'm excited about this, especially the response letter, because I do think that the surprises are frustrating for me, because a lot of the surprises are technical things that I'm not technical and expensive decisions that I personally don't feel comfortable making a lot of times, whether it's half street improvements or stormwater strategies or things like that. So getting those things ironed out beforehand would be helpful, and we can kind of focus in on the land use and some of the more planning aspects of it, rather than deciding whether this stormwater strategy is appropriate or not.
Yeah, and that is the goal, Commissioner Baker, is to be able to identify for you all what we believe remains in terms of lack of resolution or agreement on the part of the customer and staff, so that you guys know what you're going to be asked to focus in on That is one of our goals, is to be able to identify that in our staff report. There is still some inconsistency with how you'll see that treated on cases, because we still have cases that were submitted prior to these application deadlines. Of course, most of our cases were. And even though we started asking for this, we had to put out a temporary schedule last May or June that it lengthened our timeframes, and that was due to staffing. At one point last spring, we only had 2 people. And so for those reasons, we had to lengthen our timeframes. And in the course of putting out that schedule, we started asking for the response letters and resubmittals, mainly to help us out because of the volume and the staffing levels. But also we wanted to see if it would help result in better recommendations and better projects before the Planning Commission. And in my observation, it has helped with some projects, but you still see some ones that are kind of the old style, so to speak. And I think that's just because it was not required until recently. And we have a lot of applications that take some time to get through the process. The vacation you just heard, the last item, that was submitted in 2017. So for example, it will take some time to see that more consistently, but that is the goal.
A couple questions related to how the public might interact with this. I think this is really great, Joe. I think I'm really impressed with how you laid this out. I was just wondering, 2 questions. One is, I see that the public engagement materials are due right after that prep meeting. Are they required to have that public engagement meeting within this timetable? For example, like column A, are they supposed to have it between column A and column G, or is it any time before that? Because I know that sometimes community members will come and say, I hate that they did X, Y, Z, and their first response is say, oh, well, we changed that. And so you want them to meet fairly close to this time period so that what the community is responding to is relative to what the current plan is. But I didn't know if that was a requirement.
Yeah, they have to, by ordinance, have their public engagement meeting at least 10 days or 7 days prior to Planning Commission. And that's why we ask for those materials on the 6th day prior to Planning Commission, is because they should have had it the day before at the latest. And they can have it as soon, I believe, I know they can have it before they file their application, I believe is by as much as 6 months before they file it. But that's really unusual. And I can't think of, I'm sure we've had a case or 2 where they've done it before they applied, but in most cases, it's right around the time of the Development Review Committee date, somewhere in that range. It's usually about halfway between the date in which they've applied and the hearing date.
And then my other question is related to the public engagement is, if they come to us at the CPC meeting and we make a decision, and let's say there's folks in the public that want to continue that to follow the project, whether it be to BZA or City Council, does this allow us to provide those dates as part of the CPC meeting to say, hey, if you want to continue to follow this project, come back on January 11th for the BZA meeting or whatnot? Is that something we could incorporate just to make it super clear to people when the next date is?
Thank you for asking that, because that's one change that I did forget to mention. Is part of the reason we put the council and BZA hearing dates in here. And you saw Anna do it in one of her cases where she provided the BZA hearing date, is because while we put everything on Compass KC and people can follow that there, it has always bothered staff that we are not able to tell people when the next step occurs. And when the customer can resubmit, is only required to resubmit after Planning Commission, the ball's in their court entirely. And we have no way to tell the public, for example, that, hey, it's going to be at council on X date. This allows us to give with some reasonable certainty when that might happen. And we'll know at Planning Commission, because if, for example, they revise the plan and you all don't add additional plan corrections, which you rarely do, then we know that we've got a good plan. We don't need any revisions. And so we can look here and say, yeah, it will be introduced on the 13th and heard by the committee on the 19th, assuming the committee chair adds it to his agenda. It's up to him to add it, but he usually does. There's usually not an issue there. So we're able to provide that time, those dates. And we would always probably, with an asterisk, say they should confirm on Compass KC, but it should be on January 19th that it would be heard.
That's great. I think that's really helpful.
I would just add too, I think would be helpful, and maybe it's a more static kind of graphic of basically just the top line, right? It's kind of a brief description for the public to follow along of like what happens. I mean, you basically told us, right? It's just maybe a line or two. And then I think one thing that we run into is sometimes people think, I repeat this a lot, but like sometimes people think we're the final decision on a lot of this, but so maybe indicating kind of where things stop. And whether like for special use permits, right? It's BZA, correct?
Right.
And so for special use permits, this is where it stops. And then for everything else, it goes through council. Because I think that's one confusing point for the public. But that's just a couple of comments on what I've heard.
So, Bruce, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a little confused on the timeline here because I've seen us either not approve or approve, and then on the Thursday they're hearing it at the council. Ordinance has been written and they're hearing at the council. This timeline doesn't, in my mind, match up with that.
So this timeline reflects what staff would do if we were introducing an ordinance, which is the typical process after planning commission. If there's no need, if we just look at line 17 here, and let's say you have a case that you guys hear on January 4th, and they've resubmitted plans as required by this schedule prior to planning commission, and they've resolved all the revisions that we requested, and you all didn't add new revisions to your recommendation, then we internally have a process with this new schedule where my staff will have an ordinance introduced on January 13th that would be heard by the council committee on January 19th with a final reading on January 27th. And we would be able to communicate that to the public and the applicant. What you're referring to, Commissioner Allender, is when a council member sponsors an ordinance and has it introduced. My understanding is they can do that at any time, even before planning commission makes a recommendation on a case. And typically, when you've seen a committee hearing the day after planning commission on a case, well, not typically, in all cases, that's because it was sponsored by a council member who introduced it in advance of planning commission, and so that it could be queued up on those dates.
I mean, we've had a number of cases come through where the applicant has said, I need to close on the property next week. And to your point, yes, it's been sponsored by a council member or two. So I suppose that compresses or accelerates the schedule. But I'm interested just to see how the development community will say from the 4th to the 13th. And I've still got to close. They've got to get a sponsor from the council to do that, to accelerate the program or the approval, right?
Well, Bruce, I think they're doing that before they even get to CPC because they know the timeline. And I think with that example, the problem that I see is if, as Joe said, if nothing's wrong, if everything's perfect, you're still waiting from the 4th to the 19th. And like just my personality and the way that we try to get projects done, I'm going to city council first before I go to CPC because this process takes so long. And so like my number one concern looking at this as an individual is like, I love that all the things that were brought up are good things to bring up. But one of the big things that I think we're missing is speed. And I think that that's my absolute number one concern. I've been working a lot with a lot of different parts of planning department, not Joe's department, but the number one issue that we have is getting a hold of people and speed. And so like we've been stuck on so many different things. And again, I love a lot of this, but I think the number one thing we need to figure out is from these clients. I think if we were to talk to all of them, I think the number one complaint is going to be speed.
Well, yeah.
Well, yeah, I just want to be clear that this doesn't change the length of time. This is just putting on paper what we would be able to offer to a customer in terms of if they were relying on us to have it introduced, which the vast majority of customers do, what we would be able to give them from a timeline perspective. The reality is that some people choose to have a council member sponsor it, and that will probably continue to happen. I'm not expecting that not to, but the vast majority of our customers don't do that. They just want to know what the timeframes are, and this is what they are. We just have never had it on paper to include that, and we've never had the requirement until recently to have them resubmit prior to planning commission. So as you can imagine, we can't put that on paper if the plan's just floating around out there after planning commission and we don't know when they're going to resubmit it.
So Joseph, looking at the schedule, you're telling me the average length is 60 days, November 15th through January 27th, if everything falls in line as scheduled.
Yes.
So Tyler, how fast are you expecting something to take place?
I think that so in the beginning, I think I like the idea of adding these steps so that the bulk of projects get through on time, because my understanding is that probably there's a bunch of projects that get hung up because there aren't these extra steps. And so my understanding, and that's what my first question was, are these steps intended to make sure that the bulk of projects move forward in an orderly pace, which I love. The part that I would like to see is the opportunity that if something is more straightforward, if something needs to be expedited, that you don't have to wait the extra 2 weeks in one step or an extra week in another step. And that if it's something that requires moving faster, that you can get on the phone with someone, figure it out, and move things forward at a faster pace. And so, I mean, I've been, as I had mentioned, I guess last CPC, which was 2 times ago, I really want to hear what the city manager's office is discussing and looking at, because I think that we all should weigh in. I think that the development community should weigh in. But I've been asking tons of developers just, hey, what's the right process? What cities do you like? How do they handle it? And whether it's a way to pay to expedite or to outsource to expedite, I think that there are issues, and I've run into them personally, as I just alluded to, where 60 days and then knowing that you're going to hit some snags because you're doing something that's not completely unique. I mean, if you're going through not standard, if you're going through this process, it's because you need a special use permit or something that is requiring the process. And so it's not atypical to run into delays. And it's just really, really hard to get larger projects done unless you have a really healthy budget. And maybe that's the only type of development we can do, but it rules out a lot of stuff, like the stuff that peers of mine want to do.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's important to understand that we're just one piece of a much larger process, or much larger puzzle that is the development of Kansas City. I mean, the reality is we're in the city planning and development department, but virtually all city departments, I mean, I guess maybe you could say like human resources is one of them that may not be, but virtually all city departments are involved in development. And, you know, I tell my staff, all we can do is what we can do. And we are striving here to take control over what we can control, which is the applications that require a public hearing, that require planning commission and BZA and city council approval, and to be able to give people a reasonable expectation as to what these dates are to get through the process. And what we are going to honor is these dates if they honor their dates in terms of the resubmittals.
And again, I don't want to detract.
I think we have the ability and resources to do that finally. And so we're excited about being able to offer this because it is what we control. There are certainly, I'm sure, many other opportunities to create some efficiency that exist outside of the process that we control.
Yeah, I don't want to detract from the benefits of this because I think there are benefits of it, but I think that as you said, it's one part of the project or of the whole process for someone. And so I mean, I could come up with the perfect horror story because I've gone through it. It didn't even involve this process where different parts of the city, you know, whether it's wastewater, whether it's health, whether it's alcohol, you know, there are so many ways that you add a pre-application meeting on top of this 4 weeks before that. There's so many ways where if you're trying to get something done and you're trying to figure out, hey, can I create this new use? Let's say that I, for example, wanted to create neighborhood facing retail in a space that needed to be redeveloped and rezoned. It takes like 6 months just to vet if it's possible. And then to actually do it, it takes another 6 months. And now you're asking someone to either let you, you know, not pay on a property for a year, or you're having to come up with the holding costs for a year for what I'm trying to work on is a very small project. And this is just one example. And so the point being, I do think you're exactly right. This is one part of a much, much larger process for everyone. Each situation is different. So that's why I would love to see, again, I don't want to detract from all the good parts of this, ways that people can expedite when needed in ways that are not detracting from the other applicants. So I totally get that a special one applicant can create way more effort and energy from your team than the next 5 combined. And I don't want to do that to you either. But I do think that there needs to be abilities for people to move faster than, again, if you had a pre-application meeting on top of this, then a process that's 90 days.
So
again,
Joseph, let me clarify something in my thought process of what you're presenting. This is basically for a single project, not a large project that has a number of phases.
No, this could be it could be either one. So I think maybe what, I mean, to answer Tyler's suggestion, I mean, and maybe it's not an answer, but by breaking up into 2 rows for each cycle, you could look at 18 as the expedited path, row 18, because that's it's 2 weeks later. You would be eligible for that path if you don't have to go through DRC, and you basically, as I explained, don't have to go through DRC if there's no plan to review. So there are cases, for example, most of them are special use permits, and where they're changing the use of a building and the use requires a special use permit, but there's no plan to review because they're not constructing anything. Those would fall into that category, and that is a 5-week to planning commission cycle, which is a week shorter than it has historically been. It used to be 6 weeks.
The other thing I wanted to point out is that there's some spaces in here that are not your time. It's the time for the design team or the development team to respond. So some of those are just to be reasonable, that it's going to take them a few days to respond to the response, to create the response letter or do a resubmittal. So some of this is not so much your discretion as much as it is just being realistic to what it would take.
To that point though, if someone wants to get it done in the day, like if you need to get, because like if it's an important project that you need to get turned around instead of the full 10-day period, if I were to respond in a day, I would want to not have to wait the full 9 days. Like if someone has the capacity, and they might have too many projects on their desk, but if they have the capacity, I wouldn't want to have to know that I got my part completed and now I'm waiting 9 days for them to even pick up the file.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's something that is worth exploring. And I will tell you that my staff does that a lot. We actually, the way Compass is set up, for example, is when you submit plans, until the review period closes, which varies depending upon the type of plan you filed, but until the review period closes, the customer cannot upload new plans or further revisions. and that frustrates a lot of customers. And but the reason it's like that is because if you have plans being filed during review, the reviewer doesn't know which plan to look at. They don't know what's the most recent one, and it gets very confusing for everyone. But my staff have just this week on a couple of cases gone against the standard process and closed review down early so that the customer could upload a further change to the plan. And I can tell in that particular case, it caused a lot of confusion for people. And so we have to balance or strike a balance, which is very challenging, between a standard process, because people just want to know what the process is. Everyone wants clear expectations, but then they want corners cut for their project. And we're trying to do both. And I think that's gotten us into a lot of trouble as staff over the years, is that we try to provide a standard process, but we also try to say, well, you know, they're ready. They've got their response letter done today, or their resubmittal done today. So let's close the review that's ongoing and let them resubmit again. And it's hard to accommodate both. I don't know that it's really possible with the resources that we're given to do both.
Yeah, and I hear you there. And what sucks is that I view everything from a, I have to remember, you know, government works differently than private sector. And I view everything from this private sector lens of, you know, customer service. And so a lot of things are very frustrating that people say, well, we have 8 more days to respond to you. So I was like, okay, I get it, but can we just find out if this is good or not, like this particular part, or can we just get someone to pick up the phone and they'll say, no, it's in Compass KC. It's been in Compass KC for the last 2 weeks. So, okay, well, thank you for letting me know that now. If we had talked, and so from the customer service lens, I totally, I mean, I understand what you have said, and then I also understand why people are frustrated, because they're basing things off of a different level of service that they expect. And there's a certain rigidity to this, and maybe there needs to be that rigidity. But I think what's happened is that, combined with the long timeline and then the unexpected delays, which I think happen with great frequency, I can't find one person who's happy with the speed of processes right now. And again, I don't work very specifically with, or haven't put anything through your department, but based upon the conversations that I've had and what I feel like I'm hearing when I get barked at by people, I think we should pull in just at least some panel of the development community to at least hear them out on what would they say are some creative or smart ways to look at this process. Maybe none of it works, and maybe all of it's unrealistic, but I would love to hear some of those thoughts.
I guess I just think, you know, there's 2 questions here. One is 2.5 months the right amount of time? And I think that speaks to all of your questions, Tyler, is whether that's moving aggressively enough. My inclination is that if that comes with a really strong level of certainty, I think that it's within the realm of what I've experienced in my career as far as what I would expect. And I also think that it has a lot of rigidity to what is expected of the staff. So if this is publicly shared to this level of detail, you can say, well, you were supposed to get back with me on the 3rd, and then you're supposed to talk to me on this date. And you can have conversations that really shouldn't span further than 2 weeks out, because there is a steady clip to this, that each week there's a new thing that's required either by the development team or by the staff. And so my inclination is that it actually gives a lot of certainty, and that's a good thing. I've never seen a schedule this detailed, frankly, and so that actually makes me more comfortable thinking as like a practitioner to be able to say, okay, I know exactly what we're all going to be held to. But that's just kind of my perspective, and I know it's a lot different than maybe what others have experienced, but I think it brings a whole level of sophistication to this that, like, I haven't seen from other planning departments in my experience. So I think that's a good thing.
So I like hearing what you just said, Ashley, because that to me is putting the responsibility on both parties. If we have this out there for them to see what's scheduled when, then they have ownership of replying to what's needed for staff and not coming back and saying, staff didn't tell me. So I do like that element. Now, the key is for them to learn how to know where to go and where to look so that they're on page on what needs to be done.
Yeah, and I think also just like a postmortem of this as it rolls out, like, is this steady clip the right, the right dates? Do we need to spread out some places because it's just not realistic? Do we need to compress where people are kind of waiting around? But the general process of how you put this together seems really helpful.
I did have one question that came to mind as Joseph was presenting this, and that was if somebody was not ready when that time came, how long do they have to wait then to get back to the item they missed? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a good question.
So for example, let's say someone couldn't get their response letter done by the 13th, then their next deadline would be the 27th and all the corresponding dates after that for February 8th.
So they move down a line.
Or January 18th. Yes, that's right.
I think
so. That's an education process on those applicants, educating them to look at the entirety and just not, as we were looking at line 17 and 18, to look at the whole number of lines you have listed, that how it would affect them if they do not meet that first deadline. So again, that's putting the ownership on them for not making the appointment time as presented in the schedule.
I mean, when you look at the overall schedule, I think the turnaround times are not bad. I mean, I think it goes. If you really look at where that schedule then starts to blow is actually at the council. You take a month to get through the council for any application. The planning commission or the planning department is essentially doing their work in 2 months. But then you take another month to get through council, which is interesting. But it's a comment and an observation.
Well, that's why I think we need to talk to some developers, because I don't think anyone would say it's fast, and I don't think anyone would say that they're getting through in 2 months and that they're happy with the speed at which they're getting through. That's just based upon, again, a handful of developers that I've been talking to, and with the complete goal of how to develop Kansas City in an efficient but way that includes smart planning. And so I agree with you again that it seems as though this snapshot has a lot of really good things in it. But I think as we take a step back and we talk to the people who are going through this process, they wouldn't be as supportive.
Something to keep in mind as well, Commissioner Enders, is the fact that this is just the planning stage to get the project, introduced to the city to approve or to move forward with the project. Because then after this standpoint, or especially after the CPC meeting, then you have the actual plans are submitted and there's the permitting stage after that. And that might be a combination of the planning with the permitting. There's where you get a lot of time, because now in some ways you've doubled the amount of time from the time you introduce the project till you actually get to pick up a permit, that time frame. So you're only really about halfway through with this at this stage. And there's some things you don't want to submit, for permitting, because you want to make sure the project is fully accepted and vetted through by most of the departments before you actually submit the project with, for permits.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you're right, Commissioner or Chairman Crowell and Commissioner Enders, you're right too. I mean, this is just step one of what is often 2 to 4 total steps to actually pulling off a development project. In terms of the city steps, I mean, there's obviously stuff on the private side that precede this and that continue on after the city's issued permits and accepted or issued a certificate of occupancy, for example. So all those things live outside of this process. And those are things that certainly I can't control. And I'm not complaining by saying that, but I think it's an important question for the commission to really consider whether it's something you can control as a commission and want to try to control, or try to entertain that conversation, because I would suggest that I think a lot of that lies outside of the commission's ability to control it.
Yeah, again, agree with all that. That's why every process has to be as efficient as possible, because there's so many processes that get stacked up on both ends of this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Other.
Well, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say that, you know, my thought, just thinking like from the design team, is that your question and the question of your client is going to be, how much do I need to slow down the design team, knowing that, or not knowing exactly what the design direction is going to be. And so I guess what I'm seeing from this is that there's a lot of the unknowns that are settled before we get to CPC. And once they get past CPC, I feel like they have a certain level of certainty to know, yeah, you know, to Kobe's point, there's a whole other stage of this, which is developing all of the construction drawings. And I think, you know, that's the real deadline, is when are you getting your permit? And so trying to overlay the construction drawing process with this process in some way, knowing that there's a certain amount of certainty that comes after that CPC meeting. I think the more messy this process is, and the more that there's sort of conditions that pop up, I could see building owners and developers saying, well, like, you know, hold on, let's figure out what's going to happen with CPC. Let's figure out what's going to happen with council, because there's still a lot of balls in the air. But if you get to CPC and a lot of the dust is settled, I could see them saying, you know, go ahead and move forward with a couple of things, knowing that we have some certainty here. And that's going to be to the discretion of that particular developer, but that's just.
Yeah, the rationale makes sense the way you say it, but that's not what I've seen in practice. What people are saying is, this process is too long, I'm going to develop somewhere else. And what I've been trying to get these people to actually be truthful about is, people love to kind of use hyperbole and pontificate and say like, oh, well, I would have done this $10 million deal in Kansas City, but it takes too long, so I'm going somewhere else. And it's like, okay, is that really the case? No, it's not. Like, let's be realistic about why you aren't doing this. But that is what people are saying, is it's not, oh, we have certainty after this step, and so now we feel better about certainty. Not at all. No one's concerned about certainty. What people are concerned about is everything in Kansas City takes too long. That's the permitting process, this process. That's what people, I mean, it is, people are singing in chorus on it.
I guess
I mean, we hear that too. And what I always ask people, and not because I don't believe them, I do believe them, but I always ask people to be specific about what is it that's taking so long and that you think should be quicker. And unfortunately, when I ask those questions, I don't ever get answers. No one replies to that, but it's helpful. We can't fix a problem if we don't know what's wrong, what the issue is. To say it just takes too long, it's so unspecific that I don't know where to target the resources to fix it.
I've started to build a list, and it's not appropriate for this context right now, but I've been, because of exactly that conversation that we've had, where you're like, people have to be specific if they want to see change. And so I completely agree with you. And that's why it's such crap that people will just say these overarching statements. And so I have been building that list, and that's what I would love to also have, one sort of public call where it's like, hey, let's get it, anyone who wants to come, if you want to talk, we're going to hear you out for an hour and a half. We're going to try to build a list of constructive things, and we'll take it or leave it, but at least then they've been heard from. And if some of it makes sense, we can implement some of it.
Yeah.
And I
that would
agree
be
with
a good conversation.
Because everything I'm saying is based on my limited experience and practice. And so I think to the level that you could put these dates out in front of people and say, like, does this seem like the right timetable? Or maybe, I hate to say it, but maybe there's a third row that's like, the reality is there's three scenarios here. I hope that's not the case, but just to hear out those conversations, I think would be helpful.
Well, if that's the desire of the commission, to have something like that, just let me know and we can try to get something set up.
I would love that. I think this is a great, wonderful step forward, and I don't want to detract from that. So thank you all for putting up with me. Again, I think this is a great step.
Yeah, Tyler, if you like, I'd be more than happy to set in some of these discussions you have with some of these developers complaining about the time frame, because I have been through the process from start to finish many times and understand what it is and what it takes and what you have to go through. And so there's probably some education there, but there's also a lot of things that I know that maybe could happen that we could shorten things up, you know, and it just takes that discussion.
Yeah, I'll reach out to you, Kevin. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, is there anything else, Joe? Thank you for the session here. I think is a great topic and great discussion. We certainly appreciate that. And just kind of like I said earlier, maybe we put together a little schedule of some of the training topics as they come through, you know, or over the next few meetings, you know, what they look like. So
can I ask the additional question of Joseph? You said there's a public schedule, so that means we can go in and look at it. How do I go look at it?
acmo.gov/CPC. It's on the front page of that web page.
For this schedule?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it looks just like this that I'm showing. It's just a PDF version of this.
Okay, yeah, I just want to be able to look at it a little closer.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Has Brian Platt responded as to whether he has any willingness or ability to time the schedule to meet with us?
Are you asking me? I don't know. I didn't know you had requested the city manager to meet with you.
Oh, sorry. I thought that from 2 sessions ago, or we skipped a session, but from the last one, because city council had the ordinance that asked the manager's office to look into the development process. I think there was only like 120 days, so kind of a short time period. We're probably at the end of it. I just would hate for us to go through this process and it not be worthwhile. And everyone says like, well, we looked at it. Remember the city, we issued this ordinance and the city manager's office looked at the process and issued these recommendations. And I know that we talked about, there was a list of recommendations from the last time this happened that was, you know, like 100 you know, bullet points long. And so I'd love to see that still. And then also if, you know, we can be brought into that process, I think it'd be worth at least a 30-minute conversation.
Okay. I can, yeah, I do remember that conversation. I'm sorry, I just didn't understand that we wanted to talk with Brian, but I can ask the director to see if he would be willing to attend a meeting to discuss that with you.
Or if we want to start there, that would make sense too. Maybe, you know, Director Williams can bring us up to speed on how those conversations have gone, if he feels like it's fruitful or not.
Okay.
All right. If there's nothing else, making a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Yep. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
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 Bye.
Bye.